What's the cruelest prank you've ever seen that went way too far? 20 years ago, a friend of mine was prank kidnapped on Halloween, driven to a cornfield and left tied up and blindfolded for an hour. It wasn't funny. The friends that did this to him actually got some time in prison. It was just a regular kidnapping. One of the guys on my high school track team was pantsed directly in front of the girls from the other team. He wasn't wearing underwear. The person who pantsed him was one of his close friends. Yeah, that happened to me when I was a kid. I had enough friends and self-esteem that I wasn't too devastated, and the girls were all really sweet, like, oh, we didn't really see what happened. But I still never talked to that friend ever again, and I was a bit traumatized for a while. Not so much a prank, but in high school there was a girl who was on the spectrum, and she was showing off a dance, and these cheerleaders were clearly laughing at her. The thing is that girl didn't realize they were making fun of her. They told her to do it again just so that they could laugh more. I was 14 and going out to eat with my first girlfriend and my mum at Gym Boys. Just like 90% of 14-year-old males, I suffered from acne pretty badly. We were eating and having a good time, and out of nowhere my mum looks to my girlfriend and asks, "Do you like popping bumps?" My eyes widened. She knew I was horrified by her question. My girlfriend just got quiet and her face went red. My mum then proceeded to say, "What? It's not like she can't see them, and you need someone to do something about them." Then laughed, and then got mad that no one else thought it was funny and ruined the rest of the evening. I could never understand doing something like that to my child. There was that YouTube family that was like Daddy of 5 or something, where one of the kids was literally just ridiculed for the entertainment of strangers constantly. They'd do horrible stuff to this boy and then say it was a prank for the channel, and he'd be absolutely destroyed and scream that he hated YouTube. Anything done as a prank for YouTube? I mean, it's almost as bad as just child mistreatment pranking for YouTube. The channel was called Daddy of 5, I think. Thankfully, the boy and his sister were taken from that horrific family and have found a better home. As these suggestions often do, this one sent the narrator on a Google search binge, and my god, these parents on this channel ended up under supervised probation after they took a plea deal, and rightfully so. They treated their kids downright awfully. I have no idea what radio station this was on, as I was only a kid, but they used to do prank phone calls. I have little to no recollection of many of them except this one, because even as a kid I could tell it was just wrong. The radio host rang up a woman and advised that he was the manager of her husband's company, and he was very sorry to tell her that he had been involved in an accident with some heavy machinery and it had resulted in his death. As you would expect, the woman was beside herself with being told her husband had just died. She was wailing on the phone, and the radio host couldn't really get another word in to explain that it was a joke, and then they just cut off the phone call and played a song. Even as a kid, I knew it was a really stupid and cruel thing to do, and I'm pretty sure that was the last time they did a prank phone call on that channel. I remember back a few years ago, it was all over the news here in the UK that a nurse self-deleted after falling for a prank call from an Australian radio station. The TV show WB Superstar from the early 2000s. It was a show like American Idol, but they were actually looking for the worst singers. But they told the contestants they were looking for the best singers until the very end of the competition, when they revealed the truth to the winner after their final performance in front of a live audience. It was a very cruel show. A girl wrote an elaborate love letter pretending to be another girl in class and handed it to me. I was shocked to receive my first love letter and felt like garbage when I found out it was fake. I remember when the ALS challenge was popular. I read an article about a prank played on a high schooler. These kids told him it was just water in the bucket, but it was also pee, cigarette butts, all sorts of disgusting stuff. Then they put the video all over the internet as though the bucket wasn't enough. That girl who hid her boyfriend's wheelchair on YouTube. That crap wasn't funny. At my high school, 100 years ago back in the 80s, some football players talked a special education kid into continually sneaking over and grabbing a girl's butt right in the middle of the main area during lunchtime with tons of people around. This kid was really well liked at the school, and it was perfectly obvious that he was only doing it because they were being nice to him. Luckily, the girl who was the victim talked to him really calmly and explained to him it wasn't something nice to do, and that the kids who seemed nice were actually being mean to him. If I recall, the kid's teacher wanted him to go back to eating lunch in his class, but lots of students talked her down, and there was never another incident. He was still well liked, the girl who was pranked was a really popular and successful student, and while I didn't know her, because she was a couple of years ahead of me, I knew enough about her to say with confidence that she had a great career ahead of her. Don't think anything happened to the football players. The story has stuck with me because, 1, the cruelty of the prank, based on manipulating a kid not able to understand he was being used, and 2, the poise and maturity of the girl who didn't get angry with the kid, even though it happened to her in front of half the school. A friend of a friend in high school had her boyfriend pretend that he had died. He had one of his friends call her, saying he had died in a car accident, and had someone else calling up pretending to be a doctor from the hospital. She was hysterical. Later that day, after she kept asking the fake doctor which hospital it was so she could be there, she found out it was all a prank, bro, to see if she cared. Horrible. Anyway, they broke up. To this day, it's the nastiest prank I've seen in person. A group of 5 boys decided to throw rocks from an overpass at the cars below. One of the rocks ended up going through the car's windshield and killed the driver. The boys got charged with second-degree murder. Darren Brown, the English illusionist, did a TV show some years back. Long story short, he convinced a young lad who'd got really drunk the night before that he'd killed a girl. They set him up so badly. Psychologically, it looked like they'd broken this kid's soul, to the point where everything they'd set up, like the actors, the fake police, it made the lad so convinced he'd killed someone that he handed himself into the fake police station and admitted to a murder. I'll never forget the one tear trickling down this kid's face in the devastation at what he thought he'd done. Then bloody Darren Brown appears from behind a screen like, surprise! It was frickin' cruel and it stuck with me for a long time. I was once pranked by someone, a classmate probably, and they told me they were going to kill my best friend who was in the same class as me. It was really frickin' weird. The school never figured out who it was, they just asked my friend if he had any enemies. It was like, bro, we're 11. I remember seeing a video where they switched the pregnancy test to a fake positive one on their friend struggling with infertility. That is so messed up. My dad told me that when he was a kid, a friend of his gave him a glass of lemonade. It was Drano mixed with something else, and my dad vomited for hours. Thankfully, he survived and went on to have kids, but his vocal cords were never the same. It's truly insane how many of these so-called pranks are just straight-up crimes. I mean, this is some form of assault, right? Someone poisoned your dad and did lasting damage. Oh, I'll never forget it. A buddy and I were on a double date of sorts, though I was mainly winging it for him. The girl I was with, let's call her Kay, shared a heartbreaking story she thought was absolutely hilarious. In high school, Kay and her fellow cheerleaders invited the most ostracized girl in their class to a party as a joke. Said girl was overjoyed and couldn't believe it. She was dirt poor though. She ended up buying a new pair of overpriced jeans for the party, and it was obvious. She showed up with some of the tags still on them because she'll have to return them the next day. The cheerleaders notice and begin to plot. The 4 of us are sitting at dinner as Kay continues to relate what happened, laughing in fits the whole time. Someone spilled an entire glass of red wine on a love seat at the party. Kay immediately sits down opposite the spill and beckons the poor girl to sit down next to her to chat. The girl does so and immediately ruins the overpriced jeans. Everyone laughs as she runs out the door in tears. Kay casually finished the story as a sizable lump formed in my throat. Sometimes it's the small, sharp cruelties that cut the deepest. A friend of mine faked her self-deletion to get back at her boyfriend for April Fool's Day. I'd helped her without knowing she was going that far. Her boyfriend had claimed she had been sleeping around and dumped her when she told him she was pregnant. You know what? I don't miss living in dorms and I don't miss either of them. Prank war going on between 2 houses that were next to each other in San Diego, California, circa 2014. My cousin lived in one of the houses, and this happened when I went to visit him a few years back. House number 1 pulled a prank that led to a member of house number 2 being late for his first day of work. It was collateral damage, but the guy ended up getting fired for it. The guy who lost his job came home furious. He then took a 15-pound medicine ball and painted it to look just like a soccer ball. He tossed the medicine ball into the front yard of house 1 and waited. When he saw the guy come out of the house, he yells, "Hey Josh, can you kick that ball back over here?" The guy proceeds to make a running start and square up and kick the, quote, soccer ball with every ounce of strength he had. Poor guy went down almost immediately in tears and screaming. He broke 3 bones in his right foot. Just brutal. In 6th grade, I opened my locker and I found a note from a boy that I had a crush on falling out saying he liked me too. A bunch of girls in my grade were there when I found it and were super happy for me, or so I thought. When I went to the boy to ask him about it, he said he didn't write it and a group of girls who were there when I found the note had written it. I turned around and sure enough, they were laughing. But it crushed me. Not that the boy didn't like me back, but because I didn't think these girls I'd gone to school with since 1st grade were that mean. A couple of weeks later, the group played a similar joke on one of the girls who was actually in on the prank against me, and I got a genuine apology from her after she realized how bad I must have felt. None of the other girls ever apologized. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. When I was a kid, somehow my classmates found it funny to wee in other people's cans of soda. I did not have a good childhood. When I was in elementary school, some boy came back from the restroom, said he couldn't wash his hands because there was pee in the soap dispenser. Somehow a kid had gotten it open, peed in it, and put it back in the dispenser. Someone asked a guy to be her boyfriend. She said yes, and the next day she invited all of her friends to tell him that she did it as a joke. This happened to me. I got the courage to ask her out in junior high, and she said yes. I took her to a movie and asked her if she wanted to be boyfriend and girlfriend, and again, she said yes. She carried on like we were dating, saying things like, "I'm so happy we're finally together." The girl would walk around holding my hand in school, and I was in heaven. I couldn't have been happier at that moment in my life because I was dating my dream girl. All the popular guys would snicker when we walked by, but I didn't care because I was just too happy. A week or so went by and she was laughing when she said it was just a joke. I've never been so devastated. Just to update on what happened down the road, years later, karma caught up to my then fake girlfriend. She got really into smack and skanked out a bit. She did end up pulling it together, but not until she was well outside the popular pool. As for me, I did have trust issues for quite some time, even through college. But now I'm very happily married to a wonderful woman who's never treated me wrong, and I couldn't be happier. For all of you who've posted similar issues, I guess we share a hard lesson in life. People can be crappy, but in the long run, they just turn into good internet fodder. Keep your heads up. I just got pregnant. Aren't you happy for me? This was said on April 1st in front of a woman who had just lost a baby a month before. I saw a guy tip over the porta potty with someone in it. That memory was clear. I think it was his girlfriend. Oh yeah, I think I've seen something like this too. A guy was tripped over in a porta potty by some rando looking for a laugh. The guy gets out covered in that blue gunk and other nasty stuff, absolutely fuming, and proceeded to beat the prankster within inches of his life with a brick. He got some jail time and the other guy was hospitalized. I don't think bludgeoning your prankster is right, but I can definitely say I understand why he did it. Yeah, I mean, I agree with this sentiment. If you do this to someone, you accept that there's going to be a justifiable degree of ill will aimed your way, and you do not know how they're going to react. But this is about one of the worst things you can do to someone without physically damaging or emotionally traumatizing them, so it's going to be at the far end of their capability. The first time I met my brother's new girlfriend, she pulled me aside and started crying. She told me that she was pregnant, but my brother wasn't ready to tell anyone. She asked me to check up on him because he was really nervous. A couple of days went by and I texted her to see how she was doing and if my brother was doing okay, and if they needed anything. She asked me what I was talking about. I said the baby. She replied, "Oh, you believed me. I was only joking, I'm not pregnant. I can't believe you fell for that." This wasn't some teenager either, she was 30. And yes, I told my brother. Yes, he still ended up marrying her, and almost 10 years later, I still refused to trust her. A group of girls at my high school told another girl that they were hanging out at one of their houses at 9 near a train station, but they really just made up a time and place that would make her stranded at the last train stop with no more trains home. In the spirit of cruel revenge, she should have just gotten her mom to call each of those girls and say, "Josie didn't come home today. She said she was meeting with you. Do you know anything?" In high school, one of the cutest girls in my grade came up to me and told me she had a crush on me and wanted to go out on a date. I was skeptical because no one had ever asked me out before, but I was growing into my body pretty well and was definitely more attractive than I was as an early teen, so I just figured puberty was doing some good work for me. We were 16 and 17 and had both just got our licenses, so she said she'd meet me at the movie theater and we'd go have dinner after the movie. I told my mum and she got all excited and helped me pick out an outfit and took pictures of me before my first ever date. Cringe as frick, but you know how it goes. I went and got my hair cut and my car detailed so I'd be rolling in fresh, you know? And believe me, I was looking tasty. Fresh shave, hair edged up, sharp enough to cut glass. I was dripped out before the phrase even existed. So I showed up at the theater a couple of minutes early and I was waiting for her, and after like 15 minutes I was thinking maybe I'll call her to make sure she didn't have an emergency come up or something. We didn't have texting back then, you see. So I call her and she answers on speakerphone and like 5 other girls are all laughing at me saying things like, "Haha, he actually showed up." So yeah, it was all just a prank to hurt my feelings. Joke's on me, I guess. My so-called friends had my mum drop me off at the mall and we hung out until near my bedtime. Mind you, this was back when there were pagers, and for the generation that grew up with smartphones, back before cell phones were something everyone used, there used to be the pager. So, I asked my friends when we were going back home because my mum had talked to their mothers about someone dropping me off home. My parents both worked. Anyways, they decided to tell me that their mum will pick them up from this door and I should just go ahead of them. They left, and I was a 12-year-old lost kid in the mall with no parent. Luckily, one of the male school bullies saw me and was like, "Oi, nerd, what are you doing late?" And I just broke down crying. The kid just dropped the bullying and went, "Oi, oi, oi, what happened?" And according to my parents, I just blabbered everything and he told me to wait until he found a phone and paged my dad while calling his mum and telling her what happened. Needless to say, they got a frantic father going, "What the crap has happened?" And the girls said they told their mum that I saw my uncle and left with him. But to be honest, me and the bully became best of friends after that. My brother gave my phone number to some rando who proceeded to call me at all hours and threatened to commit the unspeakable act against me. Quality guys. In college, at the end of the year, a club I was in had a roast of the outgoing seniors. My friend running the roast couldn't come up with anything for one of the guys, who we'll call Ben. To drum up ideas, he called a bunch of Ben's close friends, also in the club, and asked them for things to make fun of Ben about. Thinking that this was a confidential conversation, they proceeded to absolutely lay into Ben. "Oh, that guy's seriously lame. Honestly, when I'm talking to a girl and he's there, it's supremely awkward." My friend simply recorded that whole conversation and played it outright for Ben's section of the roast, mortifying Ben and all of his friends simultaneously. In high school, someone made a pipe bomb and sneakily threw it into a metal trash can. One of my friends unknowingly walked by it when it exploded and blew out his eardrum. The trash can looked like a peeled banana afterwards. That person was ratted out and expelled. Killing a farmer's cow is some sick joke. The cow was not a meat cow either. It was the farmer's beloved pet, and he pet and fed it and played with the friendly cow each and every day. The kids forced the old bull to walk upstairs. Cows can walk upstairs, but their anatomy is not built for it, and it's extremely painful for them to do so. The old bull broke its front leg and bellowed in pain for 10 minutes. The farmer had no choice but to shoot it and kill his pet that he's had for the last 8 years right then and there on the stairs. The kids pled not guilty in court, but they were forced to pay for all of it. The bull was a Texas Longhorn, common in some areas but rare where we both lived. It was really sad to see the bull gone from the farm. I was neighbors with the farmer and he'd always invite me over to play with the animals and feed them and everything. The farmer sued the kids who killed the cow and won $70,000 and $20,000 for emotional upset. Stay winning, kings. The cow was an old bull. It was the most friendly cow I've ever seen. It wasn't even neutered and it had really big horns and loved sitting next to the farmer and just grazing next to him. Oh, the thing here is that it's either a prank that goes too far, or if the bull had successfully gone up the stairs and didn't break its leg, what sort of prank was that? Just animal cruelty? What were these kids thinking? I mean, god damn it. The LeBrant family vloggers told their 5-year-old stepdaughter a few years ago that they were going to have to get rid of their dog because it wasn't behaving well around the baby as an April Fool's joke and posted it on YouTube. A friend of mine had a crush on his coworker. It was sort of an open secret. His manager tried to help him, offered advice, some things to say, small gifts she might be into, stuff like that. What no one knew at the time was that said manager and said coworker had recently started dating and hadn't told anyone yet. So he meant it as a prank on his new girlfriend, to be put into these awkward situations, but my friend's feelings were really hurt when it all came out. My ex-friend thought it was a really funny prank to kill my brother's hamster and tie it up and dress it in ridiculous ways. Any prank involving pretending to ask someone out on a date that I witnessed in my youth group, It was pretty common, everyone had it happen at least once, and it happened to me twice, but both times I found the guy repulsive and told them so. It happened to me. It was at my first school dance in middle school. I was always the shy kid, so I was surprised when one of the popular chicks came to me to ask me to dance. I said no because I was shy, but I was elated that I got asked. A few minutes later, I was in the bathroom stall, and a few kids came in and started talking about how they paid her $10 to ask me, and if I said yes, she would have just tripped me and made me look dumb. I never went to another dance all throughout middle and high school, even prom.
Reddit, what's your deep web story? Disclaimer, I'll keep a lot of these stories lighthearted, but do keep in mind that the further you go into the dark web, the more stuff you'll find that will absolutely land you in prison. If you don't know what you're doing, stay off of the dark web. With that being said, please enjoy the video. The majority of these stories will all be the same, because they all come from people who downloaded Tor and went exploring or browsing. The vast majority have found the hidden wiki and clicked on some links. There is a fundamental misunderstanding here of what the dark web is designed to do. Those links from the hidden wiki and other point-and-click entry sites are designed to be found. The most obvious are the darknet markets. They want customers. They put their URLs out there. They list themselves on the wiki and other Tor directories. They don't want the sites to be hidden, just the owners/servers. If you were to go to one of the directories that crawls and links all the live URLs it can find, most of them will be listed as unknown. Some will take you to a site you can look at anyway, but a lot of them will take you to a page where it simply asks for your credentials before you can go any further. There's nothing else. No link to register, no FAQ, no indication of what is behind that password login. The whole idea of Tor's hidden services is that they are hidden from anybody who doesn't have the credentials to get into them. You have to get them in some other way. There's no referral links being spammed on Reddit or the Intel Exchange or general access forums. Some of these sites may be safe havens for dissidents to discuss stuff. Some of them might be the dark, spooky places of the no-sleep stories. But chances are, none of us will ever know what is behind 99% of them. TLDR, the stuff you will find by browsing the dark web is the stuff other people have found. While I personally never received anything from any deep web affiliated salesfolk, I did live with a roommate who would constantly receive the strangest brochures. At first, we'd receive brochures for like cruise lines and the like. I wrote it off as junk mail, but they came so frequently and they started getting stranger. Christian mingle brochures, petting zoo brochures, brochures for any and all services one can think of. I kind of felt like someone was gaslighting me, but I never said anything, and the brochures would disappear as quickly as they came, so I didn't have time to stress it. Until one day I walked in, and my roommate was delicately cutting into a brochure and pulling out a small baggie of powder. The dude had hooked up with the most low-key dealer I'd ever seen. Oh man, the stealth that some deep web dudes come up with is legendary. Low-key stealth? Comic book, still in the plastic ceiling, perfectly legit except the entire back page directly inside the cover was a sheet of acid. Super low-key stealth? A CD in a case, plastic sealed, played great music, looked totally ordinary, until you peeled back the case artwork and noticed that there was some SID tucked away in there. Almost flew under the radar and almost got thrown out stealth? Junk mail. I kid you not. Looked like a straight business-sized envelope, opened it up, official-looking bullcrap similar to what you'd see in regular old junk mail, until you noticed that the envelope had a hidden flap on the inside where there was, guess what, acid. I'm not kidding when I say the guy almost threw out the entire thing until he decided to make sure and tore the thing apart. That's not even talking about how some folks get away with powders, pills, and other type things. Collectible Pez dispensers already filled with pills, but looks like it's never even been opened, complete with the actual candy and original packaging as well. They're creative dudes, I swear. Obviously a throwaway. This is from way back, when Silk Road 1 was still going strong. I was looking for a certain substance, but couldn't find it in my part of the world for a decent price. Posted my request on the forum, and after a few days, someone messages me with an offer. For some reason, I accepted it and sent him around $200. Of course, I got scammed. I didn't think much of it, but posted a warning to others about this guy, saying he scammed me out of $200. Few days later, I get a message in my inbox saying something like this. Hey, I'm a vendor and this guy tried to scam me too. He just ordered an ounce of MDMA from me and an ounce of sweet sugar crystals are on the way to his mailbox. Please send me your BTC address and I will send you the $200 he scammed you out of. The next day, I had my $200 back and a deep respect for the dark web community. TLDR, guy scams me out of $200, someone else scams him of $700 and refunds me my money. And for the record, yes, he meant literal sugar crystals. It wasn't drug jargon. Back when internet relay chat was on its way out and peer-to-peer was in its infancy, I tried to download The Sims via a private FTP. The guy I downloaded from found a Trojan on my computer and walked me through how to remove it. I would take a bullet for that dude. Silk Road, circa 2013. Purchased what was promised as a, quote, mind-blowing experience. Received a dustbuster 2 days later. Strangely, no complaints on my end. There was a German man selling pretzels. Just pretzels. I feel like this is a great way to add a layer of mystique to your product if you're a pretzel maker. Pretzels so good they can't be sold in stores. Pretzels so good they're listed alongside the experimental drugs. Way back in the day, beyond the terms of a statute of limitations, you used to be able to use Kazaa and LimeWire and stuff to look at people's entire computers, since they were stupid and set the entire computer to share. I used to send out an email a day to random people, pointing out that the pictures of them screwing their husband/wife/girlfriend, etc., and their social security number were freely available, along with instructions on how to uninstall Kazaa/LimeWire. DIY vasectomy kit on Silk Road. It was a kit of weird dentist tool-looking hooks and some tube thing. $20. The best thing about Am I the Genius is that you don't have to go to sketchy websites or risk getting arrested to subscribe to the content. Same goes for Am I the Jerk too, linked in the description below. Remember to like the video, subscribe, and thanks for watching. Found someone selling a, quote, wish pill online. Basically, you take the pill, make a wish, and it's supposed to make it come true. It just made me laugh how much they were trying to sell it off as something real. They made up fake elements that were supposedly found in nature and showed videos of them, quote, making the pill, which was really just a bunch of blue lights being flashed at the screen. They were selling it for $100 a pill. Sad thing is, there were probably a few idiots who actually bought it. Got bored about 4 years ago and wanted to see what I could find. Lots of tables with seemingly useless information, people selling drugs, people screwing animals, and vice versa. Found a few white supremacist sites, and lots of cheese pizza. Honestly, it's not as exciting as a lot of people make it out to be. There are plenty of, quote, hitmen, but I'm guessing 90% of them are cops or a scam. If you are looking to get arrested, there are CP links everywhere. A lot easier to find than I had expected, but I never actually looked at them. Plenty of drugs, some guns. There's plenty of snuff, but you can find snuff on Reddit, so it's not anything special. Overall, I wasn't looking to get arrested, so I didn't do anything besides browse the hidden wiki. Fun story, I used Tor in middle school to get past the websites that were blocked so I could play Congregate. You had to enable Flash for it to work because obviously you needed to play Flash games, but you aren't supposed to enable Flash on Tor because it allows you to be traced. I didn't really care though because I was only using it for Congregate. I miss Congregate. I miss it so bad. I wish Flash games were real again. This was back before Google. Web pages were, for the most part, still very basic HTML with JavaScript. Hardly anyone used CSS. Only discussion boards and some banking sites had anything approaching mature front-end/back-end combinations. Real deep web story, not just one about illicit activities online. I was browsing random blogs, GeoCity sites, and the like, just going from link to link. Eventually, I came upon an odd page. It appeared to be random thoughts from different people, but for the time, it was very well designed. The messages seemed to be cryptic in nature, like several people trying to pass secret notes. I started through the source, and hidden in the comments of a JavaScript were various IP addresses. I gathered all the IPs in a text file and began enumerating. Some were routers with banner messages I could telnet to, almost all at universities. Quote, warning, this is a secure system at University of blah blah. The default Cisco credentials from back in the day worked on most of them, but I didn't poke around. A few of the IPs were web browsers with little to nothing on them, mostly Apache on Linux or some BSD, at least one IIS server I can recall. I finally came upon a web server with a huge directory of HTML files and TIFF images, with a few smaller subdirectories containing the same. NSLOOKUP returned no reverse records for the IP. A visual route traced it as far as Colorado. The HTML files appeared to be records a psychologist or similar mental health professional would keep. The images were of faxes, apparently of both military and medical nature. As I browsed from a subdirectory back to the parent, at the top of was a new HTML file named something like 1-hellothere.html. The timestamp was from right that minute. I opened it, and in plain text was the message, quote, "We see you." No quotes, all lowercase. About 15 seconds later, the server dropped. Got it at a friend's urging. Was on it for a while until I stumbled onto a site dedicated to random animal facts. It had no design or anything. It was just black text on a white background listing off animal factoids. I was on it for a good 30 minutes before going, "The heck am I doing?" and uninstalled Tor. I saw someone offering a cure for herpes on Agora. When the drugs arrive and you look in the mail and the only thing going through your head is, "Holy crap, I can't believe there are drugs in my mailbox that someone shipped me." It's a high in and of itself. One day, I entered one of the deep websites and found a lot of ebooks. The end. I was 19 and wanted to buy a fake ID, but found out that you had to buy Bitcoin and I didn't feel like figuring it out, so I gave up. This was maybe a year or so before Bitcoin blew up. I could be living on the moon right now, but I didn't feel like it. Yeah, about that. I'm gonna have to have you Google crypto crash real quick. I decided to check out one of the successor sites soon after the Silk Road was busted. They had 2 or 3 crappy-looking guns for several $1,000s apiece, some weed, and a metric crapload of weird research drugs. I was hoping to see things I might recognize, like cocaine or heroin or LSD, but instead, I got random mixes of letters and numbers in various pills or powders. It was a lot less exciting than I thought it would be. Downloaded Tor, went to the hidden wiki, went to the Silk Road, wasn't interested in drugs. Found a quote, saxaphone, was just a saxophone? Found a template for counterfeiting Gucci products. Considered selling Gucci products. Found counterfeit medical degrees. Considered buying one for 999 Bitcoin. Realized that was over $50,000. Found a guy selling carrots. Like, it wasn't code for anything, he was literally just selling carrots for Bitcoin. 10 out of 10 would visit again. I was a part of the no-love deep web alternate reality game where we had to do a deep net scavenger hunt, which culminated in me driving to New York to answer a payphone at 3 a.m. That was cool. I once found a forum dedicated to sharing recordings of the automated messages that tell you the next stop on trains. People would post the recordings that they presumably made themselves, and then they would discuss them. It haunts me to this day. I have so many questions. When I was a freshman in high school, my best friend and I were very into the whole deep web thing. We had Tor and we would exchange onion ports that we had discovered and would explore them together. We saw some weird crap. Right off the bat was a site for a professional hitman, which we decided was definitely run by the FBI. We discovered a series of, quote, chans, or deep web 4chan clones. Some of those were very weird, and some of what we saw was definitely illegal. We were fascinated with those in particular because, of course, we were both ridiculous /B users at the time. Lots of disturbing and violent adult images, lots of gore, sometimes the two overlapped. We tended to stay away from that stuff. It was a pretty big buzzkill. Finding the Silk Road was cool, even though we didn't ever buy anything. Probably the weirdest stuff I ever found were the personal ads. There were bulletin boards where people would just ask to do the most deviant, incomprehensible crap to someone, or vice versa. I think about the Craigslist killer when I remember those things, and wonder how many of those people actually end up acting out those fantasies. Okay, bear with me on this one. I was in the midst of a deeply depraved self-pleasure session once when I saw a thumbnail of a chick smack dab in the middle of a giant dude circle. Thinking it was a typical gangbang, I clicked on it, because why not? what did I have to lose? I was experiencing a pretty ridiculously long dry spell at the time and was pretty dang lonely. I had done the deed to the chick for the Education Connection commercials just a few days earlier, so it wasn't like it would usher me into a new realm of perversion. Anyways, I clicked on the link expecting a gangbang, but what I found was instead much more shocking. It started out as a typical one, chick playing with herself while a bunch of dudes watched on and slowly stroked it. But then, things got weird. None of the dudes banged her. Instead, there was a glass jar that was being passed around that everyone shot into. Everyone. Like 40 dudes shot in this jar. Then it finally made its way to a dude in a chef's uniform. He came out of nowhere, pun probably completely intended, and he added the white sauce to pancake batter and made pancakes. The dude made white sauce cakes. Anyways, the chick eats the white sauce cakes while everyone watches, and the weirdest adult film I've ever seen comes to a strange, uncomfortable end. Needless to say, it was very difficult to pleasure myself to. Found out about it when Silk Road 1 got shut down, so decided to check it out and found Agora. Spent a lot of time setting up an account and decided to finally buy something, so I bought a gram of MDMA, and it all worked perfectly. Then started buying more for myself, then started buying some for friends. The next thing I know, I'm ordering ounces of MDMA at a time and thousands of LSD tabs, and pretty much every drug you can think of, plus a bunch you've never heard of. I was moving all this stuff faster than I could buy it as well, really stupidly might I add. Ended up realizing that this was going to either end by me quitting or me behind bars, so I quit while I was ahead. Ended up with over $10,000 profit and a nice little stash for myself. Bought a trip to Europe and never touched the deep web again. Had about 1,000 empty gel capsules left over, so filled a bunch of them up with glitter and gave them away so people could enjoy having their crap covered in glitter. In computer science, we often got bored and screwed around. One day, we ran into the deep web. The most disturbing site we found was a comprehensive guide for cooking women. We're not talking about a short joke here. This page had information on what body types to use for specific cuts, how to prepare these cuts, and how to cook the girl so she lives as long as possible. It horrifies me that people way worse than the freaks on Criminal Minds exist. I first learned about the deep web back in grade 10 when this really strange druggy kid in my grade was going on about it. We sat together in English and had a new teacher that wasn't quite good and didn't really know how to control the class, so the last 20 minutes or so, she would just let us do whatever. Everyone around this kid's desk, let's call him Eli, would crowd around his computer and watch him monkey around on Silk Road and other weird sites he found. No CP or anything, but drugs and hitmen and weird crap in general. I was kinda sketched out by it, so I tried to avoid looking at it all, but I listened and it was pretty screwy. Eventually, Eli decided to order drugs from some site. This was high school, so we all lived at home, so he figured he'd order DMT to his cottage, go up for a weekend, and pick it up to hide in his closet. So we typed in his address to some guy, worked out the details, and waited. Went up to his cottage the next weekend, and we all waited for his return for the stories. Eli got back, and we all ran up to him to ask if it worked. He said it didn't, and he was really mad, since he had already paid the guy. He complained to whoever was selling him the drugs, and the guy was really understanding and said he'd send an even bigger package to his cottage. Eli went up the next weekend. Still nothing. The guy was very apologetic and said he'd send one more. Still nothing. Eli gave up and figured it was just a guy trying to make a quick buck. He gave up on the deep web, and that was that. Months later, he goes up to his cottage with his family and has a big dinner party with the whole complex of cottages. He's schmoozing around and overhears these elderly people talking about going to the cops. He asks why, and they tell him. They've been consistently getting shipments of drugs every week. Eli had typed in the wrong address, and the guy he was talking to had been sending more and more to the wrong people each week because he felt so bad. He was so sketched out that he quit everything and now was doing quite well for himself. Proud of him. Was on it once. Saw the usual drugs and whatnot. Then, I happened to stumble onto a blog with a non-working link that I could not confirm, but apparently, before the link stopped working, it used to be a website where you could buy human organs. Now, that doesn't seem too messed up until the blog was talking about its context. The way they got the organs was by having a team of doctors and assistants go out onto the streets to kidnap homeless people. They would put the homeless people in cages, kill them, then cut them up and sell their organs. They said their justification was that homeless people won't be missed and the police would not come looking for them. I can't confirm the validity of this website, but that is the most messed up thing I somewhat stumbled upon on the dark web. Scary stuff. Throwaway, 'cause illegalness. I was big into Bitcoin when the Silk Road thing happened, and I got into buying certain merchandise online. The first time I was very nervous about the potential of getting caught, so I decided to have the first product sent to my office. I had it addressed generically to the IT department, and my boss, who was a good friend, was going to keep an eye out on it for me. I figured this would give me enough deniability if it was intercepted. Things went very wrong. It came in, and instead of the package going to my boss, it went to his boss. Now, the company I worked for at the time is a very large behemoth with access to credit information on just about everyone in the US. Every employee is drug tested, and we have random tests. This would be a huge issue. So, I was at lunch when the package was delivered and opened. I was actually coming back when I got a call from the project manager. "Hey, so, did you have anything sent to the office?" "No, nothing. Why?" "Duh, not going to admit to this." "Nothing strange sent here?" "No." "Well, boss's boss just received a package, and it contains marijuana." Well, I had enough deniability that while plenty of people suspected me, I got off. I learned something about my boss's boss that day. He didn't tell anyone upstream about it, and rumor has it that he took it home and smoked it. Edit, hostilities people. Look, had I shipped it to my home, the worst case scenario would have unacceptable consequences. Cops can intercept the package, obtain search warrant, find plenty of incriminating evidence in my home, I'm arrested, and lose my job. This is what we call an unacceptable risk. By sending it to the office, I had deniability. I increased the risk of losing $50 worth of weed, which is inconsequential. I also completely eliminated the risk of going to jail and losing my job. Even if the company made us all take a drug test, I can easily pass those. It's called risk mitigation. You identify potential risks and find the path that has the least potential consequences. As far as why weed online, all I could find in my area was Mexican brick swag. I went a nice dro.
Identical twins. What's the craziest way which you've abused your powers of mistaken identity? I had a friend who had an identical twin, and they both spent the first month of university, they went to the same school, convincing everybody that there was actually 3 of them and that they were triplets. By the time they decided to come clean, nobody would believe that there wasn't a third of them around somewhere. "You can't trick me, I've hung out with Lucas countless times," etc. My dad is an identical twin. When he was dating my mum in college, he used to play a game with his twin. He'd call my mum and partway through the conversation, hand the phone off to my uncle. My uncle would see how long he could carry the conversation before he had to tap out and hand the phone off to my dad. Anyways, the first time my mum ever said "I love you" to my dad, she was actually talking to my uncle. My uncle faltered, and that was when my mum realized what had been happening. They must have straightened everything out because they ended up married and had me. But seriously, what a colossal strategic error on my dad's part. My brother and I had a sequence of 10 numbers memorized, so if anyone ever asked if we were telepathic, we could prove that we were. This was like 3rd grade. I know 2 sets of twins that have created their own language. One of them taught them to their kids, who are now step-siblings. I walked in one day and they were speaking what sounded like an alien language. They stopped for a second and stared at me because it had been a secret. My stepbrother ended up telling me, but I was amazed because it was a full conversation like it was completely normal. I just couldn't understand a word. My twin brother got me a detention for his dress code violation and neglected to tell me, which resulted in me almost getting suspended. In return, I failed his French test. My twin and I tried switching places for a day in grade school. It lasted all of 5 minutes because even though our teachers didn't catch on, her classmates knew and kept asking what I was doing in their class and where my sister was. My sister and I did the exact same thing. In 1st grade, the teacher had the class split up into different groups with my sister and I in different groups. After a little while, our teacher moved the groups so that I was moved from the craft table to the reading section, and my sister the opposite. I forget what happened, but our teacher had to leave the room for some reason, and I was able to convince my sister to switch places with me because I was a small child and wanted to do anything but read. When she came back into the room, she immediately noticed something was off and went to go get our mother, who was right across the hall with her kindergarten class. She immediately pointed out who was who, and we were sent off to the principal's office. This is the only story I have about us switching places because my sister respects authority and never wants to use being an identical twin to our advantage. That feels like a whole bunch of potential gone to waste. What's the point in having a superpower like an identical twin if you can't use it to mess with people? Here's a following couple of answers from people who weren't twins, but didn't let that stop them from abusing that power. I've run into people, not close friends, just acquaintances, I haven't wanted to talk to and have pretended to be my identical twin to avoid annoying small talk. Oh, I'm sorry, you must think I'm my name. We're twins, this happens a lot. I'm not a twin, but had my whole class of 4th graders convinced that I was, and that my twin was also a teacher, and we would switch places and teach the other's class occasionally. It was hilarious hearing kids' theories on how to decide when I was me and when I was my twin. I went to kindergarten all the way through to the 12th grade with fraternal brother-sister twins. During the last who gives a frick anymore weeks of senior year, they switched places for a day and just refused to admit that they weren't each other. While in Iraq, I signed all of my legal rights over to my brother. That gave him legal rights to my bank account. When my family was in financial trouble, I gave the okay for my brother to take money out of my account. The bank refused to honor the legal documents and would not let my brother take money out. Next day, he went to the same bank with my passport and took the money out of my account anyway. My brother went to a job interview pretending to be me. He, got the job and I've been working there for just over a year now. My father's father had an identical twin and they were both in the Air Force. First trick was that my grandfather was blind in one eye due to a childhood accident while running with scissors. His brother went and took his physicals for him, but they caught them just before pilot training. Fast forward, they're both active duty during World War II, and one is stationed in California while the other is stationed somewhere at a US base in the Pacific. My grandfather, Earl, was the guy who would put pilots in their cockpit and make sure it was sealed correctly before they took off. Mind you, these pilots are flying the fastest aircraft manufactured at the time, and nevertheless, my grandfather tells them right before they leave, "I'll see you when you get there," with a wink. His brother, with the same last name, imagine Private Swenson or whatever, was the guy who would undo the cockpits for the pilots after they landed in the Pacific, and he would say to them, "Hey, you made it! I got here pretty fast, huh?" Producing the most astonished look of bewilderment and amazement one could muster. They ran this joke for quite some time and even got written up in the newspaper about it later on. I thought it was such a great old joke. Hope you guys liked it. My identical twin died. There are some people who knew him but did not know he was a twin. When I bump into them accidentally, they always freak out. I have identical twin brothers. As children, they constantly called each other ugly, which they did not get but made my mother laugh every time. They still do it today, mostly as a dumb old joke. One of my nicknames for my twin is ugly. Some of the others are Lefty and Spare Parts. When I was younger, me and my non-twin sister convinced our younger sisters, who are twins, that everyone in the world is born a twin, so you've got spare parts if you have an accident. We made up stories about our own twins and how much we missed them, but how they'll always live on as our lung or whatever. Then we asked them which one of them was the spare. Twins fighting is brilliant. They're so evenly matched. One of my high school teachers said she had a twin take and pass her driver's test for her. No one was ever the wiser. My dad is a twin, and every so often one would break up with the other one's girlfriend. Oh man. How could you say those things? How could you be so cold? I don't know, it's like I hardly even know you. Bye. I imagine however it actually transpired, it left the girlfriends pretty confused in some way or another. I went to a convention with 2 friends who were identical twins. They dressed the same one day, hoping to throw people off and have some laughs, which worked perfectly, at least until they got separated. Then they both ended up going around in circles using the "Have you seen someone who looks exactly like me?" line to try and find each other. My dad has an identical twin brother. This is his famous story. My family is Iranian, and it's mandatory for young men to serve in the army for a minimum of 2 years. They do have a few exceptions. For example, if your eyes are weak or if you can't see without glasses, then you don't have to serve. My dad had the weaker eyes between the 2 of them, so he failed his own exam. He took his brother's ID to the army officers and failed the exam again to get his brother out of that responsibility. I'm reminded of a story I saw here on Reddit about a really old man who was with his wife for like 50 years, eventually ends up passing away, and without ever having told anyone he had an identical twin. So his brother shows up to the funeral and chaos ensues. That would be an awesome story, like if the other old man's life is in shambles at the time, so he shows up and then decides to keep playing his brother, who's extremely successful and loved all over town. He fakes everything by acting hella confused about the funeral. I don't know, just a thought. 1. Took the SAT for my brother. 2. My brother had me go on a date with a girl he met online when he was away. How did the date go? Did he end up continuing to see her? Did she ever found out? I have so many questions, you need to explain. 2 weeks later, when he came back from the trip, he went on a date with her, and she didn't detect it. Later, when we told her, she couldn't believe it. We were all so entertained by this for a long time. There are some questions that the poster of the story never answers satisfactorily. How did the date go? Did she stay together with the original brother? Or the second one? Think of us nosy weirdos reading your stories when you post them. Dated a girl a couple of years ago that had an identical twin. They said they'd switch class schedules for a day and stuff like that for fun. I was able to tell them apart due to the way that they presented themselves. Everyone has slightly different facial expressions and stuff like that. For fun, my girlfriend would leave the room I was in and her twin would sometimes come in and pretend to be her. Rarely worked. Fun game though, and no, I didn't have a three-way with them, so don't ask. Man, if you noticed that you were talking to the sister, you should have played it off like you didn't know. Then when your girlfriend came back in, said stuff like, "Oh man, you've never kissed me so passionately before, that was amazing." My sister and I were handed each other's picture forms on our senior year picture day in high school. We thought it might be funny to not switch them back, take each other's yearbook, school ID card pictures, and have a few people know we did it. Harmless shenanigans, right? Then one day at the end of the year, after SATs, AP tests, and college applications were all over, I got called into the principal's office. This had never happened to me before, and I had no idea why on earth I'd be called down, since I hadn't gotten into any trouble. I get there, and my sister has already arrived, and I'm just like, oh crap. Principal sits us down and tells us that when cross-referencing our school ID photos and the driver's licenses we provided at the SAT, College Board found a discrepancy and was investigating the possibility that we might have taken each other's tests. I hadn't even thought about that being a possibility, and all the blood went to my stomach. My sister and I freaked out, and as calmly as we could tried to explain what we thought was a harmless prank. But he kept a straight face and insisted that if there was any possibility that we switched tests, our scores would be invalidated. After about 10 minutes of explaining and reasoning with him about how we'd comply with any investigation, but we swear we took our own tests and so on, he calmly told us it was all a joke. I felt like I was going to pass out. He was laughing his butt off and saying things like, "Got you good," and reassuring us that everything was fine and that we should go back to class. Turns out that since we have family in the school district, the principal had heard that my sister and I switched and decided it would be brilliant to make us think our futures were in danger. In his defense, it was an objectively fantastic prank and his delivery was so level and authoritative, it at no point occurred to us that College Board doesn't reference yearbook photos to confirm identities. Props to him for creativity, but what goes around comes around. In conclusion, sister and I switched places on a yearbook day. Our principal pranked us hard months later by making us think our life careers were in danger. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Not a twin, but Asian. Back in middle school, my friend and I took each other's classes for an entire day, and no one noticed. I think the best one I ever heard was twins who worked super ultra overtime at the same job by simply pretending to be the same person and trading off shifts, putting in a 120 hours a week or so. A teacher of mine who's a triplet told us that once she took an exam for her sister that she already took and studied for, got an A- for herself and an A for her sister. And the third triplet got a D because the other two excluded her from the scheme. Honestly, being an identical twin is not so much about cool pranks as it is responding to people who ask, "Why are you so nice to them in chem class and then totally ignore me when I try to talk to you in English?" Or this, most common problem, "Guy, hey, what's up? Love the new hair." Me internally, "Do I know this guy? I didn't do anything special to my hair. Who are you? I can't remember who anyone is." Then out loud, "Hello, Guy. How brutal was that test the other day, right?" Me internally again, "Maybe he's in my psych class? Wait, did we even have a test? Maybe just go along with it. Oh, I am totally screwed for next week." Guy, "Next week? The final's not until the end of the quarter." Finally, "Oh no, he thinks I'm my twin. Should I say something? That'd be awkward. I'll look like an idiot for just pretending to know him. He might get embarrassed. Maybe I can just wing it and no one will have to know that I'm me. At this point in the conversation, I decide if I should continue to be my twin or reveal myself. This is definitely my fault, in part, because I'm so bad at remembering faces. People in my classes, people at bars, people from past classes. I'll meet people on a smoke break and find out that, to my surprise, they've been sitting the next table over from me for a few weeks. Add twinliness into the mix and it's so awkward. Imagine the "is he waving at me" feeling all the time. I get that, plus a conversation. If they ask for help or make it obvious that they just want to chat, I tell them I'm the twin. My brother and I went to different colleges and didn't generally reveal to the friends we made that we each had a twin. One day, a group of people approached me in the street, calling me by my brother's name and asking me if I'd like to join them in the pub. I knew that my twin brother was already at the pub, so I said I'd bet them free drinks if I beat them to the pub in a foot race, even if I gave them a head start. They agreed and ran off at top speed while I stood there casually checking my watch and buffing my fingernails on my lapel, only for them to arrive exhausted and find me standing at the bar, drink already in hand. It's doubly impressive that he managed to change clothes on the way to the pub. I have a twin sister. I'm a guy. My little brother was born 2 years later on the same day. However, now that we're older, we look practically identical, close enough to fool his kids at least. When we do stuff together, we often get asked if we're twins. I answer yes, he answers no. This will need some backstory. My wife is a twin. Her sister and her both work at the same camp. My wife worked at the camp during the school year, while my sister-in-law worked during the summer when there was a lot more staff. Basically, they were trading places all the time, but staff of the camp would change during those times as well. Summer staff versus non-summer staff. So it was never really an issue. My wife worked mostly in the kitchen, while her sister worked as a counselor. Generally, the two were never seen together when they were both working there. It should also be said that my sister-in-law was often mistaken for a few other people around camp anyway, which only helped the situation in the end. At the end of the week, the groups of campers would do skits. One group of campers decided their skit would be about a machine that would multiply things. So my sister-in-law decided to help them out. The skit came down to the campers saying that my sister-in-law was such a hard worker that she needed a clone to help out around camp. At this point, the campers in this particular group knew about her twin, but most of the other campers did not. They turned on the machine and put my sister-in-law in. Out came her and a boy that had the same hair color and style, but that wasn't quite right. They got rid of the boy and put her back in. Out came a girl with a different hair color, but at least it was a girl this time. Next, the machine spit out a girl with the right hair color but not quite the same build. The fourth time, the machine spits out my wife. Being a nearly identical twin, this basically blew the audience away. In conclusion, my wife and sister-in-law freaked out some kids and even some adults with their shenanigans. What you guys don't understand, and maybe some other twins can back me up here, is that it's not so much tricking the teacher when switching classes as it is keeping all the other students quiet about it, since they can usually tell right away. At least for me and my brother anyways. My sister and I have picked on my partner quite a bit. We've tricked him in mostly harmless ways, but it's fun to watch his reaction. Other than that, we've always had the same schedules at school, so we haven't really taken advantage of our twin powers. I'm curious to see other responses. I dated an identical twin in high school and I was always terrified that they would frick with me. The only way that I could tell them apart was because my boyfriend had a dot on his forehead. But what if they'd drawn one on the other twin and had him pick me up just to mess with me? Ah, the anxiety. Note to self, never date twins. Or perhaps I'll end up meeting someone that has a twin without telling me in any case. And then the charade will go on even longer. Oh God, this is terrifying. I worked in a locked psychiatric ward while my twin brother works in a local emergency room. According to him, he has had at least 2 scary as frick psych patients come up to him saying, "Hey John, you crazy frick, how are ya?" And then ensues a long, scary conversation that he is not me in. I knew a pair of identical twins in high school who fricked with people all the time. I quickly learned how to tell the difference out of self-defense, and they always gave me grief for ruining their fun. We'll call them Steve and Dave. Anyway, here's the story they told me. At their high school, they were both starters for the football team. One was a running back and the other the fullback. For 4 years, Dave blocked for Steve, as Steve got the yards, the touchdowns, and the records. In the final game of their senior year, they switched jerseys without telling their coach, and for one game, Steve blocked for Dave. Dave set the school single-game rushing record under Steve's name. Because they were blabbermouths, the story got out and the coach was teed off at them for lying and for making him look like he'd put the wrong brother at the running back the whole time. I had a good friend growing up whose dad was a twin. A group of us girls went to the movies one night. Twin's dad's daughter goes to the bathroom while we wait for her in the lobby. Wouldn't you know it, not even 5 seconds later, we see her dad in the distance, holding hands with another woman. We start freaking out, thinking we've caught her dad cheating. Friend comes out and we explain the situation, ready for battle. She laughs and says, "Oh, that's my aunt and uncle." Then she goes up to them and gives them a hug. My twin sister and I aren't really able to fully utilize our ability due to not living with each other for most of our lives, but we do like to have fun with it. If we visit each other's town with a new group of friends, we'll switch places with one another and always make the newcomer look like they're amazing at figuring out random tips and tricks of the city. On a more serious note, my sister and I switched places about 8 months ago in order to save her from a terrible boyfriend. My sister is too sweet to her to fly, but she really needed to dump this guy, so we switched places. I met up with the jerk at the bar and told him very honestly that him and I, my sister, couldn't be together due to his abusive nature. Not identical, but fraternal, still both girls, which makes more alike than not alike. We would usually say things at the same time, but that was a coincidence. When we realized this, we started doing it on purpose to creep people out, and it really creeped them out. One specially that I remember was in 8th grade. A dude always told my sister she confused her with me, so we knew that if he saw us together, he would say something along the lines of, "You're totally identical." So the time comes and he says that, so we go and say at the same time, "What are you talking about? We're totally different." The look on his face was priceless. I wish I could have recorded it. This doesn't really go with abusing my powers of identity so much as going out of my way to not be mistaken as my twin sister. She dated some D-bag in high school who literally could not tell us apart at all. He began pursuing her, but since he was an idiot, he didn't even really take the time to get to know the difference between us two. He would mistakenly hug me or be flirty or check me out or call my sister's name, all while my twin was standing 1 foot away. It became too awkward for me to the point where I just completely ignored his presence and didn't make eye contact when he was around, so he'd finally stop mixing us up. Sometimes that didn't work, so I would immediately sarcastically insult him and throw in a couple of dudes and bros to solidify the fact that I was the non-romantic twin. Even then, this moron couldn't read the flashing signs, so I just started to turn around and walk away whenever he approached. He eventually picked up that his twin was the one who wasn't a complete B-word to him.
Professors and teachers of Reddit, what's the most pretentious thing you've heard a student say? Next year, you're still going to be here BSing, and I'm going to be making it big in the real world. He got held back. He is not in my class this year. I deserve an A for this course because I was a model student. I've heard some whoppers, but this one came from a student who completed, I think, 2 of the 5 required papers, and both were crap, missed half of the classes, was 15 plus minutes late every time he did show up, never participated in discussions, and didn't turn in a single homework assignment. To this day, the lack of self-awareness boggles my mind. Middle schooler said, "I'm only taking Spanish so I can tell my housekeeper what she needs to do." Oh God, it was me. I was the pretentious student. I was going into the 7th grade after transferring out of a private school to a local public school. I met with a couple of my upcoming teachers to take some placement tests since I had been taking a couple of, quote, advanced courses at my Catholic school. I say advanced because, as it turned out, the only real advancing I was doing was seeing how far I could shove my head up my butt. I basically preened the entire interview process whilst dropping some heavy-handed hints about being moved up to high school. I don't remember the specifics of what I said, or most likely I won't let myself, but I definitely implied that the tests were just a waste of time and it would be best to just enroll me in 9th grade. In my Catholic school, I had been in the highest level math course for the school. My public school entrance score put me in remedial pre-algebra. I cried. A lot. 4th grader. I don't need to do good in school. I can go to any college I want. My parents are rich. The thing is, he's not wrong, but can he stay there? Mommy and daddy can pay for your classes, but if you're not passing them, that's on you, bud. Do you know who my father is? His dad was the head of the school board. No craps were given that day. I've also had a kid say, "Didn't you wear that outfit last week?" This was at a very wealthy school. I was half expecting that first kid to start shouting, "Potter!" Post-grad student stayed after on day 1 to tell me, "Just so you know, I'm going to be very bored in your class. But it's not your fault. I just already know everything you're going to talk about." She completed the course with a D-, failed both of her other classes, lost her funding, and now works at Panda Express. From a 20-year-old undergrad, "I'm going to be an accountant. I'll never need this database stuff." Well, to be fair, they probably won't. They'll learn all about the superior power of SQL databases and all they can do with them in the modern world. Then they'll join a practice and use the same Excel documents with archaic VB macros that have been used for decades because getting accountants to adopt new technologies is like flogging a dead horse. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's like a single computer running Excel somewhere in the world that if it were to crash, it would cause the entire world to just go into flames. Not from a student, but from the student's parent. He doesn't need to do the math, because he's a prophet. Prophets don't do math. Would you make Jesus do math? Jesus was a carpenter. He knew his math. My mom pays your salary, so give me an A. I'm a professor now, but I think my favorite comment came from a classmate of mine during my master's program. We were talking about some mass media theories, and the guy starts talking about framing. His contribution began with a long-winded explanation of the concept, and ended with him saying, "This is my idea, by the way. It's something I've been working on for the last couple of months." The list of citations on the Wikipedia page on framing is about 200 sources long, dating back to the mid-1950s. I'm a 4.0 on the dean's list, so academic misconduct won't be a problem for me. I'm gonna be super wary of all this guy's papers. Like, sure, people cheat out of desperation, but desperation takes 2 forms: desperate to not fail, and desperate to get the A and not the A-. As a high school English teacher, I was counseling a freshman student, about 14 years old, that she should probably do some of her coursework. After all, she wouldn't want to come to her senses as a junior or senior and realize that she was a year or 2 behind in credits and wouldn't be able to graduate. Her response? "Why should I listen to you? You make about as much as a garbage man." Lots of laughing, giving high fives to friends in class. Plenty of other students to focus on in class. I just moved on to help others in class. Tough to convince a 14-year-old to think ahead. Just checked her transcript. She's about a year and a half behind in credits. It's going to be very difficult for her to graduate this year. Side note, thank you to all the sanitation workers out there. Our comparative wages aren't really the point of this memory. Wow, it would take all of my self-control not to respond, "Yeah, and the trash they deal with doesn't talk back." Professor? I'm subscribed to Am I the Genius. Why didn't you give me an A? Oh, was it because I wasn't subscribed to Am I the Jerk linked in the description below? Thanks, Professor, in this weird analogy. I'll go do that. Not personally, but while I was student teaching in a wealthy area, another teacher told me he heard a student say that their parents got them a crappy car, but it was just until they totaled it. Then, after they destroyed it and learned their lesson, they get a Ferrari. I don't understand how this would teach them a lesson. Crash your car faster so you can get a new one and possibly be injured and or die in the process? Edit, probably an assassination plot. Notre Dame has required theology classes in first year of studies. My professor was a pretty laid-back guy, so one day we're discussing the Tower of Babel. Humans all speak the same language and get tons of stuff done. They decide to build a tower to heaven. God doesn't like that, so he makes humans speak different languages so they can't communicate or build further. The professor asks why God would do something like that, and one student raised his hand and said, "Well, it's not for us to question God." The prof gave him a bemused look and replied, "Yes, it is. We're in a theology class." It was a fun class. I went on a date with a professor at Stanford who had a student raise their hand to ask if he was qualified to teach the course, most likely because he had a southern accent. I doubt they asked him that when he taught at Georgia Tech. I got a 77 for my final grade. Why didn't you bump me up to a B? This was after she didn't turn in the last 3 homeworks and had to have an extension on her final project because she didn't finish. My wife teaches a class where you literally have to show up and that's your grade. She understands athletics, family emergencies, etc. She had a student come in at the end of a semester and whine about the grade he got. A D, I think. The kicker? He flat out told her the reason he missed so much was because he was napping. He was lucky he got the grade he did. Clarification: the class in question is a performance class. You literally show up to practice for the performances, and that's your grade. As a learning management system admin, I hear all kinds of crazy stuff during grade appeals. Last semester, a couple of kids on a sports team were cheating in a class. Each of the 5 would take turns taking the test first online and then in succession, so that while one may not get a great score, the rest usually did. So, the instructor asks how to resolve the issue. We make the 30-question test randomized from 100 question pools. Immediately following the next test, we have a meeting with the dean. Apparently, the students felt it was unfair. Nothing happened to us or them, but the fact that they actually filed a complaint because the test couldn't be cheated on amazed me. Edit. Well, there went my inbox. So to answer some questions. Number 1. Blackboard is the #1 LMS provider in the world. Can it be terrible? Yes, if done wrong. Number 2. Random tests are not unfair if the questions are pulled from the information you are covering in class. Number 3. Yes, prevention of showing test results is an option, but does nothing if they are all in the same room just staring at the first student's computer and taking down the questions. This is why we randomized it. Number 4. There are lots of ways to tell if people are cheating. The easiest is how long it takes them to answer questions. Test start and end times also play a role. So in this case, one person would log in, take the test, and then show the results to the others. The rest would all log in at the same time and begin to answer a pretty difficult test very quickly. Number 5. They had no actual justification to complain, and they still filed a complaint. That's the nature of college. People complain about everything. If they can find a loophole, they will exploit it. Probably too late to the party, but I'm a high school art teacher. I was talking about art influences, and a kid said, "I'm not influenced by anyone. The only art I like is my own." Okay, kid. Oh man, I have a story about this. I was in the fine arts program at a state college. Had a classmate, Dawn. She was a quote, perpetual student, meaning she'd been in college for 10 plus years. She was over 30 in classes with 19-year-olds. We were in a figure drawing class together. Dawn was doing some god-awful rendition of the figure model, and the professor steps up and gives her some pointers. We were completing a specific assignment, not just doing whatever, but Dawn was drawing something way out of left field and unrelated to the figure study. Anyway, so the prof steps in and is talking to her very politely about how it's figure drawing time and not glitter glue stick time, and Dawn just looks at her and says, "But that's just not how I do my art." Professor was dumbfounded and I was cracking the heck up. Like, if you're not going to learn different art styles, why are you in an art class? Some context. It's a private Catholic school, but not the safest/best around. I was suggesting to a student to stop wearing their watch because it might be stolen. Quote, "But this is just my everyday Rolex." Student turned in his final paper, and instead of responding to one of the prompts, he wrote his paper on how much he hated the class and how terrible we were as teaching staff. I gave him a B because, while he didn't answer a prompt, he backed his claims up with evidence, which is well above average work compared to his classmates. All the same student. My dad said I don't have the personality to be a nurse. I need to be a doctor. I don't have time to join any student organizations. I'm married. I'm gonna make all A's this semester. Oh, that academic warning? I took care of that. She had a mediocre GPA, hadn't made good grades in science and math classes. Unless her dad built the medical school, she wasn't getting in. And that academic warning was totally legit. I spoke with her professor, and he laughed for quite a while when I told him that she said she would make an A. He said she might pass with a C- if she was lucky. The kicker? Her husband then called our office and threatened to get us all fired for daring to tell his precious wife something she didn't want to hear. Gave us a deadline to apologize to her before we called the president of the university to file his complaint about our behavior. Looked him up on Facebook. One of my teacher's assistants is an excellent Facebook stalker, and he works at a local bike shop. Not even a student at our university. We turned the voicemail over to campus police, and they had a chat with him. Update, May 2017. After 2 changes of major and 3 or 4 changes of pre-health designation, pre-med, pre-dent, pre-PA, whatever else, this student finally graduated. She is going to go to the local community college in the fall and start their respiratory therapy program. If she found her passion, then I'm happy for her. Yes, these are my favorite stories. I love the ones that have happy endings. I once overheard a student in the college-level science major-specific class that I teach say, "I wonder if this teacher will be able to tell me something I don't already know." And apparently I did, because he failed the class with a 32%. Edit. Okay, wow, this blew up overnight, but 2 things. 1, I did not fail him or discriminate against him in any manner because of his arrogance. He just failed. 2, I have an 87% pass rate for my class. I teach a biology class that many only take if they want to major in biology or organic chemistry, so it isn't often that I get students passing through who are unmotivated or are bored by the material. I'm a good professor and certainly try my best to help my students succeed, but sometimes they either can't or won't. I don't really need to learn this kind of basic accounting. I'm definitely going to get a job at Goldman Sachs. To me, his TA. Spoiler, based on his grades, this kid was definitely not getting a job there. I don't deserve an F, you frickin' prick! I know, but it's as low as I can give you. Source, email between my dad and one of his more charming students. Edit, it is worth noting that I never knew who the student was, just that the exchange had taken place. As another commenter mentioned, it was the student who sent an email regarding his/her grade. In regard to the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, we're fine. We're the only students who have a chance of passing the AP exam, so you should just focus on us. She was referring to herself and 3 other classmates. She was also loud enough for the entire class to hear. Edit. For everyone asking if she was right, the class I taught had 20 kids. In my opinion, 16 of them had a shot at passing, but only 6 passed, including 3 from her group. One of the kids who wasn't in her group beat all their scores with a 5. So no, I don't think she was right. She also said at the end of the year, "You know, Mr. Chief Lazarus, it's gonna be your fault if I don't get into the college I wanted since you didn't give me an A." Unfortunately, this happens a lot in schools where standardized testing is tied to big funding increases. So-called high kids and bubble kids receive all the attention, ensuring they will pass and teachers' efforts aren't wasted on other students. Maybe this kid was a jerk, or maybe they've been isolated and focused on during their whole academic career and they thought that this was just how the system worked. Edit, for people telling me I'm wrong, my source is my experience as a high school teacher. Our testing facilitator sat me down and told me which kids to work with during testing seasons. It was basically the top 30 to 50% of any given class. Everyone else was ignored because she assumed they wouldn't score high enough to help us hit our numbers. Your school or district may be different. This was mine. When I used to teach 1st grade, we had our school-wide open house in the 2nd week of school, so we're maybe 7 or 8 days into the year. I had a parent come up to me and ask, "So, how is my daughter doing academically compared to everyone else in here? She'll be going to an Ivy League school, so she needs to be the best student in your class." I told her that we were less than 2 weeks in and that I don't, quote, rank students for 1st grade. The mom was a thorn in my side for the rest of the year. I'm a student, but our teacher once gave us the whole, if you're not going to be respectful, if you think you already know the material, then just leave. A kid stands up, walks over to the door, realizes that everybody is staring at him, thinks about going to sit back down, but decides on just leaving. The teacher actually let him leave for like 15 minutes before going to get him. This was middle school, so he couldn't leave campus. My first year teaching, I subbed in a grade 10 English class. It was September, and one of the girls in the class was heavily pregnant, so would have gotten pregnant in grade 9. All they had to do in this period was write 1 page about themselves. Easy sub lesson. So I'm walking around checking work, and this girl and her group have done crap all. So I pop over to them and remind them they only have 20 minutes left and need to get something written on their page. Without a pause, the girl looks up at me and says, "Miss, Jesus didn't write his own Bible now, did he?" I just walked away. And Mary didn't screw anyone to get pregnant. Finish your essay. This one's sad, but a high school kid showed me his Patek Philippe watch, told everyone it's $18,000 and worth more than his teacher. His dad gave it to him. Dad, or mom, never came to PTA. Didn't answer calls or respond to his grades or notes home. He stayed with a different family. his parents vacation without him. Just give me the exam. I already know all you tell me. I've been doing this for 4 years back home. I mean, wood framing and concrete. My trade I teach is steel stud framing, drywall, taping, etc. No concrete or wood framing. Never mind the fact that the apprenticeship itself is 4 years. From a senior who can barely read or write after I told him he needed to check his essay for spelling/grammar errors. Whatever, man. I'm gonna come back here in 5 years and make way more than you. I said, considering that I'm a public school teacher, I certainly hope that he will make more than me. This is from a 16-year-old student arguing about the grade she earned on a research paper. My essay doesn't need any citations because my opinions are fact. I have never, in my life, been consumed with the urge to backhand a child more than this one right here. I gave a student a C on a philosophy paper, and she says to me, "Do you know who my father is?" To this day, I have no idea, but the grade didn't change. We're gonna end this with a wild one. I have a student that refuses to do anything the way other students do it. He's never been able to make a single, regularly scheduled workshop or presentation 3 years now. Oh, medical school prerequisites? They don't apply to him. He once requested that I come in on a Saturday to meet with him because my regular office hours, quote, didn't work for him. He was my student for 2 years, but now that he's an upperclassman, he is handled by one of my colleagues. I warned her. She didn't believe me. Until he walked into her office this morning to tell her he can't make any of the required workshops he needs to attend, but since he already filled out the paperwork, that's cool, right? He would also like us to find a way for him to graduate early because he just got engaged and wants to use his tuition money for the wedding or something. I don't know. I don't really listen to him anymore. Edit. My throwaway account now has more karma than my real account. I have to get some sleep now so I can go back to the university bright and early to mold young minds or something. I will try to remember this account and update with news of this pretentious jerkwad. But for now, the sweet, sweet release of sleep awaits. Edit 2. He just came in the office wearing skinny jeans and a fedora! Edit 3. It's been 2 months and no one will see this, but this jerkwad sent me an email the other day and spelled my name wrong. Don't send me an email asking for a favor, then spell my freaking name wrong. Spell other crap wrong, but check that you spelled the name of the person you are emailing correctly. Edit 4. 5 months since the original post. He had his committee interview. I spoke to the prof who conducted it, and she said he started off really well, but then the mask slipped and it became very obvious that he's a huge jerk. He thinks very highly of himself, even though he isn't really very accomplished. By pre-med standards, he's pretty average. He brags about things he's done like he's the only person that has ever done them. He's still trying to graduate early so he can hurry up and get married, but med schools aren't going to be impressed by that. I'm still trying to get on his subcommittee panel since I didn't interview him. Not to tank it, since I will be one of 20 people, but to see what everyone else thinks. We have far more impressive students who have accomplished a lot more, and I'm really backing their applications. And, since I had the flu, I'm headed back to bed. Edit 5, May 2017. I finally logged back into this account and had a bunch of messages asking for an update. I read the student's committee letter a few weeks ago, and it was nicer than the one I would have written. From what I heard, the subcommittee lowered the author's scores a bit since they thought she was too kind to him. They've all dealt with him at some point and find him very pretentious. It's going to be a few months before I find out his fate, but I think he graduated, I haven't checked, and is probably planning his super pretentious hipster wedding. My colleague next door now refers to him as, quote, my favorite student, whenever she hears from him. In a sarcastic way.
What's the most hilariously useless magic item you've ever had in Dungeons & Dragons? In my last campaign, my players got a hammer that shoots confetti and makes a party blower sound on crits. A dramatic moment happened where he had to put his pet owlbear down, as it was morphing into a monstrosity because of the big bad evil guy. Because the creature was on the ground morphing, he auto-crit. The beast lies there, writhing in pain, trying to hold on to its own self for as long as possible. You lift your hammer solemnly into the air, feeling the weight of not only the weapon, but the situation. As you bring it down, you feel flesh give as the skull has been pulverized from the transformation. The sound of teeth clacks against the ground, echoing in the room around you. The party looks at the ground, and a moment of silence consumes you all. So I'm doing my second video on Dungeons & Dragons stories in 2 weeks, don't hate. And yes, every time the chance to do this comes up, I'm going to leap at it like the hyper-obsessed nerd that I am. The +3 sword of Edward Tumbleton slaying. Edward Tumbleton was a tailor in a nearby city. They discovered a sword that was very effective at killing him. Just him. Neither the party nor any other person on the planet had any reason to kill the guy. The party ended up killing him by blowing up his shop with a fireball. The sword was never used. Poor Edward Tumbleton. I think at some point he got on the bad side of an artificer who told him, "I have a sword with your name on it," and it turned out to be true. Gave my party a sash of swimming, see retextured aquatic cummerbund. They put it on the donkey pulling their wagon and promptly forgot about it. I haven't though. 2 years later, I haven't. Haha, still waiting on the moment that the donkey will be the only one to survive the flood. The donkey is going to get sold or killed, and they won't remember the sash of swimming. That's what my party would do. The mug of pea warm chongo. Turn any liquid that enters its internal volume into, you guessed it, warm chongo, the temperature of fresh pee-pee. They threw it into the sea, and yes, while it would eventually produce an infinite amount of PWC, it didn't produce it faster than the various flora and fauna of the sea could consume it as current carried it away. The toils of all that be. Help not the primal fault. Rivers flow into the sea, yet still the sea is salt. I used to love making magical items that were off the wall. I felt like the game's items didn't reflect the silly stuff someone would make if they had the time and manic attention to detail. There's a devil called Chiton. It's chain-wrapped, chain-swinging, freaky, pain-loving Hellraiser type. My party fought one in a dungeon. He's wearing a unique amulet that makes chain. You place a piece of chain on the surface and the amulet starts slowly, magically generating a chain of the same dimensions. It only makes 10 feet a day, but over time you could make a few gold selling mundane chain. I just thought it was thematic and interesting. The party left the dungeon, went to town, found a smith, and poured their entire life savings into making 2 links of solid gold chain that would make Flava Flav weep. And I wept. What a fool I was. Reminds me of when my DM, tired of us breaking down doors, introduced adamantine doors on a massive castle, but he let us lift them off the hinges. We got so rich we decided to abandon the campaign. I gave one of my players a delicious magical sandwich that regenerated itself each day as long as you didn't eat the crust. It didn't offer any benefit when you ate it, it was just an infinite sandwich. That sandwich became a character in and of itself. The amount of time that was spent talking about the sandwich, its contents, the flavor, etc. was crazy. Every player described how their character would ogle the sandwich whenever it was brought out. That character is gone now, but she kept that sandwich right up until retirement. She spends her time in Candlekeep Library, devouring knowledge and also the sandwich. Wait, as long as you don't eat the crust, what if you cut it in half and separate the 2 halves? Would each half generate a whole sandwich as long as there were no bites taken out of it? It's the deep philosophical questions like this that keep me coming back to Reddit. Yeah, there are any number of minor items in D&D that are capable of changing the course of human, or humanoid, development when you think about their broader implications, if they were used to their best effect instead of just by a random bunch of idiot heroes. Fun stuff. Ring of fire detection. Range? Touch. I had a merchant selling some knickknacks, and one of them was a ring of fire identification. If you pointed it at something, it would declare in a loud, clear voice, "Fire," or "Not fire." Obviously useful when facing illusory flames, but for some reason the party didn't spring for it. A fire distinguisher? A rope that couldn't be tied, not even for a second. They were facing a dragon who loved puzzles and eating non-dragons. They gave him the rope and made the deal that if the dragon couldn't make a knot within an hour, then the dragon would need to let them pass through. Our party's DM gave us a magical, mysterious bag. When we opened it, we pulled out a turtle. We reach in again, thinking there must be something else to this bag. We pull out a rabbit. Still thinking that there must be something else, something more meaningful to this item, we reach in again and pull out a 9-foot-tall deer. It really was just a backpack that lets you pull out random animals. My bard proceeds to use Speak with Animals, then charms the deer to let us ride him. We named him Preston, and he's been our ridiculously massive means of transportation ever since. The Rod of Irony was a fishing rod that you could only find by fishing it up. Using it only fished up more rods of irony, We used them for firewood. I'd become a fishing rod salesman. They found a wand that creates a random and unique lock that incorporates itself into the substance it's used on, so it might make a suspicious recess in a stone wall or a brass-plated keyhole on a wooden door. If probed with lockpicks, you would encounter moving tumblers or some other appropriate but unique locking mechanism. It didn't magically create a compartment, it just made a lock. Even if you used it on a desk drawer, it never made a latch or bolt. So the drawer would open perfectly fine while having a useless metal cylinder with tumblers that weren't connected to anything. If you successfully picked the lock, it always felt like a real lock despite lacking the physical pieces, it would make a soft chiming noise and the lock would evaporate. The wand was a training tool used by a famous locksmith to challenge himself and his students. It had no practical application at all outside of that profession. It ended up being used by the druid, who had ranks in magical device, don't ask, to constantly mess with the rogue. The druid would take every opportunity to wild shape into a small critter good for scouting, and then place fake locks anywhere the rogue might conceivably try to use the search skill. The rogue's increasing paranoia whenever he found a lock, and his overblown promises of vengeance every time a random hole in a floorboard wasted a minute of his time and chimed at him, was a pretty good gag. It turned a little sour when the druid made an extra lock on an honest-to-goodness treasure chest. The rogue rolled a natural 20 to pick the first lock and got a chiming noise. Then he rolled a 3 and triggered an energy-draining trap that permanently lost him 5 HP. After that, the rogue stole every wand the druid had in the middle of the night and threw them all into a bottomless pit in the Underdark. I had a magical rod of rubber duck. Gave it to the party as a joke item because they kept asking for weird crap. Not one of them chose to identify it. It was an artifact-level rubber duck. Once it was part of your inventory, it would never leave it unless it wanted to. It had wisdom and intelligence of 28, sentience, and it could be attuned. It was actually a great old one that could grant anyone a wish spell with 100% accuracy at the cost of 2 of the caster's levels. Nobody learned that it was probably the most powerful item in the game. And what is the function of a rubber duck? In the first campaign I played, the party began their journey by finding an orc woman in a tavern whose baby was stolen, and what she found in its place was a knife with a weird symbol on the handle. She sent us with the knife in search of the baby. We spent hours and hours and session after session never using the knife in combat. We then found out that the knife would turn anyone it cut into a lizard. My character ate peanut butter off that knife more than once before finding this out. It may just be me, but that item sounds far from useless. Facing a beholder? Slice? Now you're a gecko. Unstoppable vampire lord? Nope, it's a chameleon now. There's a reason polymorph is a popular spell for getting rid of powerful enemies while you wipe up their minions. My party has been carrying around a wand of disguised self they found in a magic store bargain bin for over a year and haven't used it yet. Except that's not actually what it is, hence why it was in the bargain bin. It's actually a wand of this guy's elf, which once a day can summon an incorporeal elven servant to carry out a simple task for you. I was so happy with myself for coming up with that one, and so sad they never even tried to use it, so the pun goes unheard forever. My infamous Horn of Resounding Quacks was a hit, summoned any duck within a half-mile radius of the person using it. The party never went hungry after that. For clarification, it was indeed to call any and all ducks within the half-mile radius, but it wasn't a matter of instant teleportation. The ducks have to travel, but do so willingly, answering the call of the horn. Poor ducks. If you're an evil DM, you can get them used to it, so they never bring food anymore, and then they put them in a duckless place. Have fun starving, boys. Depends on how you read it. Summon as in any duck within a half-mile is summoned to you, there need to be ducks, or summon. Within a half-mile radius around you, a duck is randomly summoned. If there were no ducks before, there is one now. It might be out of your sight, quacking, or standing behind some rocks a quarter mile away, but it's there nonetheless. Congratulations! The ethereal plane, the 7th layer of hell, and the deadly ruins of the great archwizard Asgordon are now infested with ducks, because your gosh damn bard kept blowing the horn every 3 seconds. I could see this. Some evil demigod lording over his demon minions, sneering as fire and smoke swirl around him, and then a duck appears on his lap. Then another on top of his throne. Suddenly there's a dozen ducks all quacking about. Then hundreds. This is actually an incredibly powerful magic horn. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I gave my players an alchemy jug. They had it for most of the campaign and mostly forgot about it apart from the odd joke. But when building to the end, they used it to torture my main villain. They'd captured him. To find out what it was and how to stop him, they used the jug to pour mayonnaise down his throat until he agreed to talk. That gave them advantage on the intimidation check they had to carry out, which they succeeded on. So mayonnaise is an instrument of torture. In my 3rd edition early days, my friend's older brother was DMing a game for my friends, my sister, and me. One of the items we got rolled on the random table was a gust of wind fan. It's exactly what it sounds like. Wave it, creates a powerful enough gust of wind to propel a boat and possibly rips itself to tatters. Threw it in the pack and forgot about it. A few sessions later, we're defending a town from waves of invaders. The final boss is a Cyclops or an Etin or something. Big bruiser, we see it approaching, with enough time to prepare for its arrival. My sister asks us to use all of our healing potions and then give her the glass vials, which we do. Then she turns to the DM and calmly explains how she takes the vials with her up a guard tower. She smashes and grinds them up, waits for an opportune time, then uses the fan to blow a gust of powdered glass particles into the Etin's eyes. The look on this man's face, a cross between, "Holy crap, that's awesome. I'm so happy a story like this is in my campaign world now," and "Frick, this boss was supposed to be difficult." In the game I'm currently in, our DM gave us a flask of endless water. It can produce water in a trickle, a flood, or a deluge that shoots 30 gallons of water in one turn. Our cleric has just fallen from a bridge over a chasm, and through clever bullcrapping, our sorcerer has managed to catch the falling cleric with a web spell. As we're all racking our brains to figure out a way to save them, our cleric pulls out the flask and uses the water cannon mode to propel herself back onto the bridge, using the web strands as a fulcrum. This sounds like what happens when you play D&D with engineers. I'm not sure me or any of my players would have ever thought about using it in that capacity. More water-based shenanigans follow. I had to literally ban the 3.5 spell Create Water because my entire party rolled classes that could learn it. The default is Cleric or Druid, but there's books that award it to arcane casters as well, and solved everything with the stupid cantrip. It would blow your mind how many puzzles, traps, combat encounters, and social situations can be solved by liberal application of magic water. Someone refuses to talk, waterboard them. Pressure plates might be down this hallway, set them off from distance with a flood. There's a locked anything, break it by dropping water from a height. Ambushed, turn the road to mud and run away. Setting an ambush, turn the road to mud and wait. Starving, you can survive for 10 days on just water. Need to escape from a conversation, a pipe bursts, and the building floods. The list goes on. Turns out physicists and engineers can turn a cantrip into the power equivalent of a 9th level spell, given enough thought. I have an idea for my next character now. Your party and DM do have to be on board for this to work. We would literally spend half of a 6-hour session doing math and digging through the books in order to make this kind of thing happen. We found it fun. Most tables likely would not find it fun. We ended up with Excel sheets for things like newtons of force in terms of D, X, and air expenditure by race in terms of volume per hour, accounting for increased and decreased size categories. They did all of this to justify plans like shrinking themselves down, jumping in an extra-dimensional hole with fixed dimensions, and mailing themselves into a building. Yes, there was an easier way. No, it wasn't as much fun. The ban was fairly well agreed on eventually. The cantrip shenanigans were amusing for a few weeks, but they ultimately got tired of already having the solution to every encounter, and we agreed to limit its use out of combat, non-encounter scenarios. You want to create a slip and slide to navigate a wizard's tower? No. Once my party got a huge, beautiful magic sword which was improperly identified as a sword of ogre slaying. Instead, it was a cursed sword of ogre saying. Whoever wielded it would only be able to yell "Ogre!" at things. Several adventures later, they were attempting to catch a thief who was evading them. They came up with the brilliant idea of setting the sword as bait and just going about their business. Sure enough, sometime later they heard, "Ogre! Ogre! Ogre!" ring out through the town, and they caught him without consequence. Reminds me of the Ring of Hunan influence from volume 3 or 4 of the Encyclopedia Magica from 2nd edition AD&D. Whenever attempted to be used, it caused a painful burning sensation in the user's mouth that could only be removed by consuming 1d4 plates of rice. The Ring of Hunan influence. This jade ring is decorated with oriental characters including Fu Manchu and Charlie Chan. It affects all food eaten by the wearer. There is no noticeable change in taste, but one round after being eaten, the food begins to burn for 1d4 HP damage per round. Water only makes the burning worse. Plus 1 HP to the damage for one round. Only eating 1d6 plates of rice will ease the pain. However, no matter how much food is consumed, the wearer still feels hungry an hour later. For anyone who doesn't know, Hunan is a Chinese province known for their hot and spicy food, which I assume this is a reference to. Not while I was DMing, but my favorite useless magic items to this day are the Boots of Quickstep. Once per turn, you may click your heels as an action, to gain an action. It resulted in my character beginning each of his turn clicking his heels. It was marvelous. Once had my party find a magic spoon. It emitted a terrible aura of dark illusion magic, and merely holding it filled players with a sense of dread from its sheer chaotic energy. Its in-game abilities? It worked like a fork instead of a spoon. The arcane spork of +5 anxiety? Let it be known that the narrator is cackling maniacally and writing down magic item ideas while writing this script. A modified version of the 5E wind fan that only works once a day and immediately looks tattered after use, so you can never use it multiple times, but it only works once every 24 hours. Now, it sounds like a not bad magical item, but the only times it's ever been used is to show people what it does. So an NPC says, "Hey, what's this fan do?" The player grins, "I'll show you." Useless gust of wind noises. It happened 5 times and then it got sold off to the underground scrapper they were working for. Was playing a campaign on a tropical island type of place and an enemy knocked my weapon off a cliff, so I used a coconut as an improvised weapon, crit with that thing 4 times in a row, and decided to keep it for getting the final blow on people. Was a barbarian and the DM liked that the coconut was killing things so much he had me keep track of the kills, and eventually I had a 3+ coconut that on a crit would ricochet until it didn't kill something. So basically he gave me a coconut of great potential. A few odds and ends, a can of dehydrated water, just an empty can, a wand of kindling, just a stick to burn, a scroll of raise dead that makes a dead body float 6 inches off the ground, a ring of invisibility that turns only the ring invisible on use. One of my one-shot campaigns had all players at 8th level, so I wanted to give them magical items, but not anything too OP. So one of my monk players wanted a decanter of endless water, so I changed it to a homebrew version where it didn't do the stream, fountain or geyser things, but instead it would pour endless alcoholic beverages. He could make the decanter fill with mojitos, or margaritas, or a Heineken, whatever, but only to get drunk. I thought it was harmless and fine, until I realized he'd selected the Way of the Drunken Master and got drunk on command anywhere and everywhere. It was quite fun. I'm writing a new one-shot, and I might take some ideas from this post too. A DM once gave our party a mortar and pestle that let us grind out spices in fairly large quantities. We were supposed to use it as a hook to get involved with an army. It would have let the cooks keep the soldiers happy and put us in good graces of a local lord. Instead, we wound up completely abandoning that questline, setting up a spice shop and went into business. It was supposed to be a one-off adventure, but we had a great DM and it turned into the best long-term campaign I've ever played in. It had a court intrigue, assassination attempts, war, curses, everything you could want. It ended when we all went our separate ways at the end of high school, with one of the business partners, human, dying of old age, another, elven, selling his shares of the business to the dead one's heirs to retire, and my gnome faking his own death and leaving town to avoid a jealous husband, literally riding off into the sunset on a flying merchant ship. Man, you know how much spices cost once upon a time? More than their weight in gold. Saffron is still worth more than its weight in gold now. A quill of penmanship and literacy allowed any creature to write their thoughts down in perfectly legible common. A rogue in the party was obsessed with capturing different creatures and monsters to learn their thoughts, only to find that most animals just wrote onomatopoeia versions of normal animal sounds, like roar or quack. The party was sick of it and in a later adventure agreed to trade off the quill to a half-orc bodyguard in exchange for information to ambush one of the campaign's villains. The half-orc would become a Thomas Paine-like thought leader, and his first 2 books were dedicated to the party. I got a corncob pipe that made bubbles. Seriously, that's just it. Just bubbles. They didn't put people to sleep, they didn't explode under flames, nothing. Maybe it would make someone's eyes burn if they rubbed it in. We were assaulting a town and I was part of the crew taking the gatehouse. We barred the windows and doors and I put the pipe under the edge of the door, and blew it like I was inflating my own life raft in the ocean. Soon, bubbles were pouring out at the seams, and the guards inside were panicking hardcore. One of them tripped on something and hurt himself on his own weapon. Once we opened the door, they came stumbling out and we cut them down while they were disoriented and distracted. Shortly thereafter, I traded the stupid pipe for various types of arrows at a Fletcher. I had that damn pipe for a long time and only used it once. We were playing through a pre-made campaign. At one point, the players retrieved a magical artifact, which turned out to be an orb of control dragons. It does exactly what you'd expect. In theory, it could have been very useful, except no dragons were showing up in the campaign, so it was basically useless. It did, however, lead to a running gag where our most paranoid player kept attempting to control dragon random NPCs to see if they were secretly dragons in disguise. Belt of teleportation that only transported the belt and the pants of the wearer to an unoccupied location within 60 feet of the user. I put it in as a gag, but the players started using it to startle opponents by teleporting pants just above them. The shenanigans increased when they discovered the belt also teleported whatever was in the pants' pockets. My groups have a tradition of gifting players useless magic items with a birthday theme on their in-real-life birthday. Two of the favorites that I bestowed so far include a pair of boots that dropped streamers everywhere he walked and a ring that turned the wearer's poop into chocolate cake, which could be eaten to regain 1 hit point. Why did you name this ring of healing poop cake? The Chocolate Fudge Maker. My DM gave my character a glove that when the word bravo is said, emits the sound of applause. My friend's character used it intentionally to blow our cover infiltrating an enemy stronghold because he wanted to fight something. Our GM gave us an item which was the head of an ancient goblin king. This severed head had the power to give good advice to us, but it was completely unrelated to the question. What should we do to kill the dragon? Remember to wash your hands after using the bathroom. How do parents of gold diggers feel about their kids' relationships? I'm an older brother. I finished school, got a job, got married, bought a house, and had kids. My parents are kind of average about me. They're proud of my family, but feel I didn't reach my earning potential. We got some inheritance from my grandmother, and I used it to modernize my house and buy a car. My sister finished school, got a job, started screwing her boss, moved into his house, got a promotion, splashed half of her inheritance on holidays and clothes, and the other half on a sports car, because she doesn't need a mortgage deposit now that she has a boyfriend with his own flat. My dad literally called me to tell me how proud he was of her buying a sports car all on her own. It would have been hilarious if it didn't highlight my parents' messed up values and complete blindness to their daughter's dependency on her butthole boss/boyfriend. I haven't seen the guy for a few years, but an old friend of mine started out as a gold digger with his girlfriend. He started dating her 4 years ago because he found out that she was rich. The dude came from a broken home with some really messed up parents. He also had ADHD as well as a couple of other learning disabilities. Quit high school in grade 11, but started dating her shortly before that. Her dad was filthy frickin' rich, as he had a lot to do with the mines in the area. A CEO in a huge mining town. He was seemingly mooching at first, didn't go to work, didn't do anything but drink and do substances with his girlfriend. More than once I heard that the father was going to kick him out, but was persuaded by his little girl not to. He eventually falls for the girl and not for the money and decides to take it upon himself to change. Out of nowhere, he says, "I want a job, I don't care what it is," to the girl's dad, and her dad puts him to work. Now, when I knew him, he was famous for his work ethic in intensive labor jobs. Dude was like the fricking Energizer Bunny. He worked his butt off, earned his promotions, and went back and finished high school, completed 2 trades, and the two of them bought a house together. To my knowledge, he rarely drinks and hasn't touched substances since he started working. I was pretty surprised because when I went to school with him, he caused nothing but trouble. Cousin is a gold digger. She was actually taught to be one by her mother, who married a very hardworking and self-made successful man but wasn't quite up to her own dreams. When my cousin was in college, she needed a new car, so she went to the dealership, flirted with the salesman, banged him for a week, and got a loaded new car at his own inside cost, then dumped him the next day. That was pretty par for the course. Car salesman to himself? Yep, still got it. And ladies and gentlemen, we're back on topics that make the narrator despair at the state of humanity. Don't be like this woman. Other way round for me, I'm a 21-year-old girl and my father is a gold digger. He's on his 3rd wife, who's a rich, former antiques dealer. They go on annual 6 to 10 month holidays in various continents, staying in 5-star hotels the whole time. They live in a penthouse overlooking Sydney Harbour, including the Harbour Bridge and Opera House. All of my brothers work constantly for everything they have. I'm a uni student who works 6 to 10 shifts a week at a pub, and I live in a semi with my mum, with a mortgage that's like twice as much as the bloody house is worth. Honestly though, I'm glad he found a rich wife. Means I won't have to take care of him when he's dying. My aunt and uncle were cash flow rich. Tons of cash, spent it all, no savings. So they looked really rich, but literally didn't have a penny. Their irresponsible behavior rubbed off on their 2 daughters. Got ridiculous degrees and then glamour jobs that didn't pay. Daddy wrote them a check every month to cover the difference. They dated male models who were as broke as they were. Then one day, Mummy and Daddy had to file for bankruptcy, and the daughters were informed they were being cut off. For good. No problemo. They bought tiny bikinis and met 2 lawyers the next day, and each one married the lawyer they met. One lawyer was bald, the other fat. From male models to that. How does Mum feel about the daughters? Brags about how successful their husbands are at every chance and how they're living this fabulous lifestyle. One lawyer was bald and the other fat, from male models to that. Did you just bust out a freestyle? One of my college friends was always open about wanting to find a rich guy to take care of her. She signed up for a dating site focused on wealthy older men looking for young attractive women. About a month after signing up, she met a guy through the site and went on a few dates. She was 21 and he was in his mid-40s. This would have been about February of that year. In March, he bought her a new Mercedes, and by the end of April had leased a brand new condo in Toronto for her, so she could be closer to him. She moved into the condo on the 1st of May. By November, she announced she was pregnant and they got married in the following spring, while my friend was 7 to 8 months pregnant. The kid is almost 2 now, and they legitimately seem like a happy married couple. She loves not having to work and spends as much time as she can at her parents' also fairly wealthy cottage. And her husband was on the website looking for a trophy wife to spend his money on, so there's an understanding between them. But from day one, she had the opinion of, I'm attractive and have a forward fashion sense, and this is what I want in life, which she found and fulfilled. She still keeps up her appearance as a stay-at-home wife, and they're always out at fancy dinners. I respect the crap out of both of them for knowing what they wanted and being mature about it. Sounds like a win-win for everybody in this case. I've definitely known guys who are pretty open about wanting a trophy wife. It is. There are so many relationships like this in Greenwich. It's like there was a freaking factory somewhere putting them together. It worked so well for them. Wife and husband don't love each other per se, but she's pretty and agrees to stay pretty, and he's rich and agrees to stay rich. Boom. Baby-making city. I'm not a gold digger, but my Chinese mother keeps telling me about the rich Asian girls who move to Cali and tries to get me to hook up with one. I don't see myself being happy with someone I have nothing in common with, though. Funny, my Taiwanese mother keeps telling me to watch out for the gold-digging mainlanders that just want a passport and half my assets. Good friends of mine, a bit older than me, a brother and sister. Sister is a gold digger for sure. She's on her 4th marriage to a millionaire. They came from humble beginnings. The dad owns his own business, but is very middle-of-the-road, middle class. The parents help the brother out a lot with money, and the sister constantly talks crap about him because of it, considers him a leech on their parents. Of course, the brother resents the sister for never having worked a day in her life, but vacations in Europe once a month. Thought I would answer because it's an interesting dynamic to have witnessed. People are very harsh in their judgment of who they consider gold diggers. It feels quite ridiculous sometimes to be the older sister-in-law to a gold digger. I'm older than her by 10 years, yet she gives me life lessons on a regular basis. For example, when she feels like she hasn't had a good day, she calls and says, money doesn't buy happiness. Tease me the frick off, because she has no idea what it's like to have real problems, like getting ready to lose your home or worrying that you're going to have to feed your kids that day. She married a guy 15 years older so that she could sit on her butt and shop. She has a huge house and no responsibilities. I'm not a jealous person. I'm happy for her if she'd just stop talking bullcrap about how hard she has it when she knows very well that her brother and I aren't doing well financially. She's also a bragger, constantly throwing it in my face like, come and see my new car, isn't it awesome? We're going away for the weekend, too. Can you babysit? Look at the pictures of this exotic place we're going. I can't wait. And I'm sitting there like, I haven't taken vacation since my honeymoon. She knows this. I don't really blame her though. She's completely unaware of anyone else other than herself. Really. She doesn't do it for meanness, she's just dense. Yeah, marrying someone for their wealth and ease of life might be okay if both sides are aware of it. But then choosing to whine about your rich person problems and giving life lessons to your less well-off friend is a real crapbag move. Don't forget your roots, people. It's a job that takes time to perfect. It's not like the old days when you just keep shoveling pay dirt into the trommel until you find a nice streak. Sadly, the bygone days of hitting glory hole after glory hole just don't happen anymore. Most companies go bankrupt the very first year, and if you don't adhere to the strict environmental regulations, you could be kicked off a site at a moment's notice. Honestly, I'd rather have my daughter just find a nice rich doctor and become a housewife, but that's not her style. She always played with her brother's Tonka trucks. The Yukon is in her blood. Her grandfather was a gold digger too. If you marry for the money, you're going to earn every penny. Not sure where I heard that saying, but I think it's great. My ex was a gold digger. He couldn't handle that I'm happy not being filthy rich. I'm comfortable, that's enough. He left for a rich girl and then left her for a richer girl and married her. He's already cheated. I dodged a bullet. Isn't it more like the bullet took a turn? I think it's at least somewhat likely that most parents of gold diggers never thought that much about their children's lives, ever. This makes sense. An ex of mine used to complain about her dad, a doctor who never had time for her. When I was dating her, I found out that her ex was 25 years older than us and had founded and sold a company for tens of millions of dollars. She currently is not working and lives at her family's beach house. This will probably get buried, but I'll post it anyway. I'm not the parent, but the child of a gold digger. My dad was educated exclusively at private schools and elite Ivy League education. He got his master's in finance by age 24. He's from a politically connected family and could be making millions on Wall Street. Instead, he took much lower-paying jobs in order to help raise me and my brother. My mum has her degree in art history. She dumped her previous fiancé and met my dad while celebrating that she'd dumped her old flame. They got married, and within 9 years they were divorced. I constantly heard them fight about how my father wouldn't give her some spending money. He repeatedly told her that if she'd like to spend money, that she had a degree that she could earn her own with. This was not acceptable to her, so they got divorced. Within 2 years, my mum was remarried to a doctor and quit the job she had since doctors' wives don't work. Within 3 months, the marriage fell apart. Throughout my upbringing, my mother constantly beat it into me and my brother's skull that you should always have the finest things, never settle. She would always make comments in private about how people didn't always look their finest. This was in spite of the fact that she refused to work a job that was beneath her. To my mum, how something makes her look is infinitely more important than anything else. Her new fiancé is awesome and he's the VP of a branch of banks. She spins this as, he's the VP of a bank. She would always brag about where her husbands, at the time, were educated. My brother works in business and she spins this as, he's a consultant who has clients in Manhattan, Toronto, etc. I work at a bakery doing hourly level tasks. She tells her friends, my youngest works as a baker making organic high-end bagels. Despite earning into the six figures, she somehow never has money, yet just bought a new BMW. My mum is both a gold digger and a fricking snob. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I have a brother who tried to be a gold digger. He met a girl in the then AOL chat rooms. She lived in the next county. They got friendly and started to meet together on a friendly face-to-face basis. At one point, she invited him to her home where she lived with her parents. This is when my brother discovers the girl's family is rich. They lived in a giant mansion, lots of acreage, servants, and had a huge game room, complete with pinball machines, video game machines, a jukebox, etc. The girl's father, as it turned out, once owned a company that distributed classic TV shows for syndicated reruns on TV stations all across the country. I say once owned because he had it sold for the sum of $200 million back then, and the girl was an only child. Hence, she stood to inherit everything of her father's someday. My brother was excited. Even knowing her only a few weeks, in spite of not being in love with this girl, behind her back he was talking marriage and living in the lap of luxury for the rest of his life. How he had made it if he played his cards right. Unfortunately for my brother, the girl was of a very liberal persuasion. She had no respect for herself, cheating on one boyfriend with another and another. Even more unfortunate for my brother, he wasn't able to get in on any of that action with the girl. She was sleeping with every other boy except for my brother. He couldn't get himself out of the friend zone. He was the only one who couldn't get himself out of the friend zone. On one occasion, one of the girl's boyfriends made an unannounced visit to this girl at her home. Her family naively and innocently cheerfully directed him upstairs where the girl was. He went upstairs to the girl's bedroom and walked in on her going down on some other guy. The both of them completely in the naughty. The boyfriend, in a rage, grabbed the stalker's guy, grabbed him out of the room, and tossed him down the stairs. The family was shocked to see this unclothed guy come tumbling down the stairs into the room with them. Anyway, over a few months' time, my brother and this girl drifted apart to the point where they never saw each other or conversed online again. He watched his dream of being rich fade into the sunset. I don't know where that girl is today or what happened to her. How is he her boyfriend, but was still in the friend zone? I'm quite amazed you've made that douche nozzle sound like the victim. Good job, that's a skill. Yeah, I don't get it. It sounded like he wasn't even dating her. He met her at a beauty salon and was interested in her type of purse. That should say something. He's happy that she has an ample backside and knows that she's dated others that are well known. I'm worried that she is spending his money on cosmetic surgery when she should be buying toys for their kids. I want them to get a prenup. It's something that he needs to have. He started out as a dishwasher, got promoted to janitorial, and then to fry cook. He worked his way to a Mercedes, but I'm afraid that he would just have traded her up for some other girl anyway. Yep, that seems like an arrangement that could very well end in tears for one or the other person sooner or later, but adding kids to the mix makes it a little sadder. There's an entire town called Wellesley, Massachusetts, and its neighbor, Western Massachusetts, where all couples are made of rich guys who marry gold diggers/trophy wives. If you have a chance to be there, it's hysterical to watch. So self-absorbed and so self-centered. I'm sure there are other places like that in the US, but that's the one I know. I have a family who lived there, and it's so true. My aunt, a doctor, married another doctor. She's the absolute minority there, and people simply cannot understand why she'd choose to have a career when she could just benefit from her husband's without doing any work. Mind-blowing. You know, I'd rather they leached off someone rich than me. The talentless bums. My boss is extremely wealthy and is constantly dating young girls who are obviously gold diggers. Not very attractive guy pushing 60 who refuses to date anyone over 35. We all at the office recognize it and think, to ourselves of course, that it's sad and borderline pathetic. However, he's happy with what he does and loves the attention, so we all just go with the flow. I think it's obnoxious and think very little of his girlfriends, but whatever, it's his life and his money, and if that's how he wants to spend it, he can be my guest. I'm sure I can comment on behalf of my mother. The one time I dated someone with a good job, $100K a year, she was thrilled I'd found the kind of person she had prayed and hoped for. Someone who could take care of me. She has the opinion that I'm a little too lofty and in over my head for the real world, despite having always had a practical plan for myself, studying hard to graduate high school early, putting myself through college, always working a full-time job, if not two, to keep myself funded. Only once has she helped me financially. $600 I never even asked for. But this guy must be 100% a good catch, cause he bought her a new toaster when hers broke, and an expensive radio she wanted for Christmas, i.e. the trickle-down economy. What takes care of me will benefit her. Mutual friend to both parties. I went to high school with a boyfriend and know the girlfriend from a mutual friend. They start dating because she was a rebound for him, and he was willing to take her crap. Guy proposes last year and she denies him because she thinks she can do better. I know her sister and that's what she told me. Fast forward a year when he got another job and is in the middle of buying his first house and is doing better, she all of a sudden wants a ring and her name on the mortgage. All our mutual friends think she's pulling a scumbag move because she definitely wasn't going to stay with him before. Apparently the mum is putting her up to this, and the boyfriend is not enjoying buying his first house because he realizes now what a succubus he's dating. My ex is, or was, a gold digger. When her mum told me that she didn't think I could afford her daughter, it teed me off, but then I realized what the mum was really trying to tell me. Rich guys who are smart keep a low profile and never reveal their money until they're sure that the woman is sincere and not gold digging. There was a reality show about princes from foreign countries who came to America looking for a wife. They pretended to be regular schmoes until the right girl came along. One guy from India lived in a palace, and I mean with a capital P. He had over 100 servants just to maintain the place. I didn't see the end of the show, but I understand the sentiment. With the way divorce courts in America work, a stupid rich guy who isn't careful is going to be writing a check with a lot of zeros in it. Brother of a guy who married a gold digger. I pretty much know what mum thinks about the mess, though. My brother is an MD, very highly regarded, extremely highly paid. He did the classic marry a nurse thing. She barely put up with our mother and I, his only family, while dating. Once married, she turned into a psycho B-word from hell towards us. She's made his life miserable, but they have kids together, so he stays with her. He's put her through a couple more degrees because she didn't want to do nursing anymore, but wanted to do something else. Of course, she doesn't actually bother to use the degrees for anything, so it's a total waste of money. She does nothing but sit around the house all day, doesn't take care of it, but they have a maid so the house isn't a wreck. My mother and I both feel really sad for him. We're hoping that once the kids get old enough, he'll dump her sorry butt. Also hoping the kids don't turn out to be train wrecks. The older one has some serious anxiety problems, probably from her mum being a constant screaming B-word, but at least she can get free psych meds, so she's got that going for her. Mum has set up trusts for the kids and put in clauses preventing the psycho B-word from ever having any form of control over them or benefiting from them. So the kids will also be able to pay for their psychiatric care when they're out on their own, even if everything else goes to heck. Not a gold digger, but my mum is. To give you an idea, my biological dad was a World War II vet, loaded out the wazoo, boats, houses, businesses, everything, who was married to another woman when I was conceived. I'm 27, and she's on her third husband right now. A sweet 92-year-old man who bought her 2 cars, a house that was $250,000, and pays her bills so she doesn't work. This includes the $800 a week treatments for her dog. My sister sugared for a while, which I suppose is a form of gold digging. Everyone found it gross, including me. Now that I finally understand no matter how hard I work, I'll never not be poor, I'm considering it myself. I don't have the stomach for it. It's not the screwing the old guys part. I actually don't have much reaction to that at all. It's that there's a whole lot about it basically play acting as what every horrible man on earth expects a woman to be, and I just can't fake that. It's gross for one thing, obviously, but it's actually a lot of work being that kind of woman when it doesn't come naturally to you. Sugar babies earn every penny of that money tolerating these stupid, annoying old men. I suspect I went to school with many gold diggers. I went to an expensive private high school, so I suspect my former classmates are used to a certain lifestyle. I have them on Facebook, and I've seen 5 of those girls marry much older gentlemen. I want to believe there's more to the relationship, but they're fairly attractive, and their husbands are much, much older. Their wedding pictures, however, are quite pretty. I used to be friends with this girl. She kind of had ugly duckling syndrome. She was cool to be friends with, but she just wasn't someone you'd want to date. She was really into sports and kind of one of the guys. About 6 months after high school, she turned 18. Then she had this great boyfriend. All of the girls talked about how awesome he was and how he had a pool at his house, had a couple of nice cars, etc. We all go to this party at this guy's house, and we're hanging out around the pool, and this guy in his late 40s, maybe early 50s, comes out and starts talking to us. I thought it was her dad or something. She walks up to him and sticks his hand in the back of her bikini bottoms, and she playfully tries to pull away, but they make out. Pretty mind-blowing. Turns out this guy just retired from the Marines and was her dad's commanding officer. Next, all of her friends are hooking up with military retirees. I think him and her got married a couple of years later. My boyfriend's sister is 100% a gold digger and daddy's little girl. She married into a wealthy family at 25, divorced him, ka-ching, then married his best friend who was independently, and much more, wealthy. I guess she had to change her plans after her lucrative philosophy degree didn't work out. My niece married a guy she met at high school because his family was loaded. His dad died not too long ago and they inherited $272 million. I can't say I'm pro-gold digging, but damn. Who is that guy or girl that you work with? In my office, it's the "I took the liberty" guy. You come back from lunch and your desk is cleared of the project you had been working on. You run to the bathroom and find your freshly poured coffee replaced with your washed, empty mug. As you dare to say, "What the hell?" he comes around the corner of your cube. "I took the liberty of straightening up your work area," and gleefully moves on to ruin someone else's afternoon. This can also be called the Helperton. That's when you go into his office and take the liberty of turning every single thing upside down. Work with a woman who repeats, "Having fun yet?" almost every hour of the shift. Does she also say, "Another day in paradise," and TGIF, hump day? There is this one man in the office, I'll call him Tim. Tim is a very elderly and angry man, known for this woman's cardigan he wears every day, as well as his many heated conversations, of which the snippets are pure gold. Last week, out of the blue, he proclaims he was up to his knees in blood while on a phone call. Yesterday, he said he would rather be doing blow down the streets of New York. One of my favorites included, "Sometimes in life you're the chip, sometimes you're the dip. I love and fear Tim." Detox caseworker here. I work with that girl who talks about her failing marriage, how much she hates her kids, and how much she hates working where she works. She's a very odd person. One day she loves her husband and talks about how much of a god he is, yet she hates her marriage. She talks about what little SOBs her kids are, yet she wants another one, making it 6 children. Lazy as frick, and she's that girl at the yearly Christmas party where she's the only one that goes over her limit and starts spilling secrets people have told her. Not to anyone's surprise, she's gotten many of her coworkers to hate her guts upon walking in the door. Why do social services workplaces always hire the crazies? Does someone in HR say, "Oh yeah, you came to the interview with mismatched shoes and a transformer in your hair, you're caseworker material"? Trust me, I'm a caseworker, no one wants this job. It's hard as frick and emotionally taxing. We have insane turnover, leading to some questionable hires. For some reason, social workers are enshrined in my mind as being very level-headed, if bureaucratic and dull people. Maybe that's Hollywood influencing me. So there are nutters among them, I guess, judging by those last posts. My boss asked me what my Christmas plans were. I told him I'm Jewish. He, in all seriousness, asked me if I would be more comfortable in accounting. Do you work for Michael Scott? Is he Jewish? That sounds like something any number of funny Jewish guys I know would kill to deadpan. A salesman who occasionally comes through and hassles us. The first time he asked what I was working on, I didn't realize what he was up to. I thought he needed help with something, and of course, I'm glad to help. He keeps asking things like, "You're not busy. You don't have anything going on?" It seemed odd how many times he asked, but still, I'm thinking he wants help, is trying to be polite, and is worried he's interrupting me. I get started on what he asks, and he leaves. Next thing I know, my boss arrives asking why I have nothing to do. Thankfully, my boss is pretty cool, so nothing bad happened. The salesman is not our boss or even in our department, yet he occasionally comes through checking on us and asking things like, "Why does that job take 2 people? He's such a prick. If he was doing his job, he shouldn't have time to nitpick. He's trying to make himself look good by making everyone else look bad. Unfortunately, he will probably end up being middle management. Most bosses love suck-up snitches and don't realize the rat doesn't do their own job efficiently." There's a dude that watches videos of God knows what and screams along to them. I think he's watching wrestling or maybe boxing or something, because every now and again he'll just shout, "Oh, put him on a body bag!" Or, "Oh, Queen, B!" and start dusting off his hands loudly and laughing. It's fricking bizarre. The guy that I work with has only one eye and can drive a forklift better than I ever could with 2. Great guy, too. But how does he wink at cute girls while he's forklifting? Every single day, he comes in and spews some bullcrap. He's just invested another $175K in some property. He just had a genius moment on the way into work and will now be able to solve the energy crisis. He's just met some famous smart person, like Elon Musk, who said he was the smartest person they'd ever met. This isn't occasionally, this is all the time. Literally every single day. You can't even talk with this guy. It's so irritating. He follows me everywhere, and you try to have some normal conversation, and he just spews more bullcrap. I tried talking with him once and said, "Well, my car has this thing going on with it. I may need to take it to the shop." He replies with, "Oh, that reminds me. My boyfriend is having the Lamborghini dealer come over tonight. He's having a midlife crisis, but work just gave him another $2 million bonus because he's such an amazing architect." Frick this guy. Start actively perusing these conversations. Ask for him to expand on the details of the story to see how ridiculous they get. For instance, you could have asked him, "Oh, your boyfriend's an architect. Has he worked on anything I'd recognize?" To which you would likely get an outlandish answer, which you could make the person expand upon again. It's like a game. Oh, he always comes up short when we ask for proof. He kept going on once about his lake house at Lake Tawakoni, which he put up on an Airbnb. One of the other guys I worked with started bugging him for the link to look it up. He wanted a place to go to, with his wife on a weekend getaway. Crazy coworker comes back and says, "Oh, you couldn't afford it," and says the insurance on the boat rental alone is $3,500 a day. Still never came back with an address. We kept pushing him on it. "Oh, it's booked until October." This was back in the spring. We still haven't gotten an address on that house. One of the guests on Airbnb rented the house and a huge party with 100 plus people, and they broke sinks off the walls and burned the couch on the front lawn. His maid, who he hired to look over the place, called and told him about all the damages. She sent him photos, but when we asked to see them, "Oh, I don't have them on me." Really? Did she send them via UPS? How do you not have photos on you in this day and age? Anyway, we asked about them the next day. Oh, Kevin, his boyfriend, wouldn't let me show them to anyone, and miraculously insurance sent them $45,000 within 2 days for all the damage. Never seen insurance work that fast before. Someone found his boyfriend's resume online, but he's not an architect. Something similar to interior design, I forget the title, and he had done stuff like he designed the layout of some gas stations. You're going about it wrong. You don't want proof of the story, you want the most outlandish, impossible story you can pull from the guy. This guy gets it. I had a coworker snowboard down a mountain in front of an avalanche after he was launched from a helicopter. That's what I get for trying the bunny slope. Frick you, CB. I put my boogers on the adjustment levers of your chair and then frick up your settings when you're in the bathroom. I'm a waiter, and one of my coworkers is an Italian old man that's so close to retirement that he doesn't care anymore. He pretends to pee into wine buckets by turning his back to the customers and emptying a water bottle into them. He prank calls the restaurant by calling and going, "Go freak yourself," before hanging up. Smokes constantly and is never on time. I love the too close to retirement to care guy. I used to work with one who would answer the phone with, "Hey, what are you up to besides being ugly?" Everyone knew his sense of humor though, and he was much beloved. I work in an office. I have an older lady, 45 to 50, next to me who says, "Awesome sauce," at least 5 times a day. I'm thinking about quitting because of her. Bring a liquor flask to work. Every time she says, "Awesome sauce," yell out, "Woo, there it is," and take a swig. Pretend like it's normal and never explain why. She'll either stop saying it or you'll get so drunk you stop caring. Either way, mission success. I feel like there's some differing opinion on what constitutes that guy or girl. I honestly just thought it was some kind of weird pervert who constantly turned everything towards their nice interest. Turns out it might just be any sort of weirdo. My old coworker. I couldn't tell if he was a mad genius or a man-child. I have not and will not meet anyone else in my life who is anything like this guy. He, 1, was so American that he told me he would show up to my birthday party in a Stars and Stripes banana hammock cawing like an eagle. He moved before my birthday, or I think he actually would have. 2, took the fan and some wires out of a recycled PC. He somehow found a D battery somewhere and hooked it up to the wires so the fan would run. He would lightly fan people as they worked, sometimes right in front of our customers. You nice and cool yet? 3, drafted and made a falcon talon on the end of a magnetic tentacle. The talon is a phone holder. He has a patent and is marketing it soon. There's also a version with a monkey tail on the end of a raptor jaw. 4, he put a rubber band ball on a paperclip, then impaled it to the ceiling of the break room. Turned on the strobe function on his phone's flashlight and opened a Pandora Club playlist. Told everyone they deserved a disco party and would shriek when someone started to take it down. 5, hugged an old man who went off on another coworker because he just needs a friend. 6, strategically planned out how to travel from the front of the store to the back using only the rafters. A section of it he needed to turn into a liquid. He drew a diagram. 7, printed a bunch of rebel flags on the store printer and gave them to our black supervisor, saying she needed to hand them out to preserve his heritage. He was Southern and completely sarcastic. 8, printed a banner-sized check made out to him for millions of dollars. Subject was, "Winner for the biggest poop." Plenty more too, I just can't keep them all straight. I miss that guy. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I don't work there anymore, but when I was a delivery driver for a pizza company, there was a guy who just didn't give a frick. The boss had the hots for him, so he got away with so much crap. Never arrived when he was supposed to, always got to go home on time, or early if he wanted, even if we were completely backed up. Whenever he closed, he never cleaned in the back kitchen, so instead of firing him, his shifts got changed to opens. He would take random breaks and play guitar and sing loudly about getting wasted and smoking green herb in the storeroom, loud enough for the customers to hear. At one stage, he even peed on the floor in the room where we made the dough. After a few months, he went on holiday. He never came back, but his name was always on the roster. The stories I have about that place are amazing. I'm thankful I don't work there anymore, but also glad that I did. Worked or trained with a lady once who said bonus in place of any kind of hooray type statement. I just found $1 on the ground. Bonus! I'm taking my girlfriend out on a date tonight. Bonus! I just purchased a delicious beverage from the vending machine. Bonus! I didn't get hurt doing this mildly unsafe task. Bonus! It was getting to be a little much, but she quit very shortly after being hired. I was so thankful. She quits. Bonus! I have an older lady of the same age range as well who says, "Oh, Milanta," all the time. All the time. Thankfully, I don't see her too often since we work in different departments. When I do see her, this inevitably is something she says. I don't get it. How does that phrase become such a crucial part of someone's vocabulary? Oh man, we have the over-opinionated oversharer. We stopped using her real name and now just refer to her as TMI. Hey, did you send that document over yet? Well, I would have if it weren't for the fact that this guy I've been seeing for the past 3 days has this brother who's a total D-bag. Wasn't even considerate of my gluten allergy over the weekend, which really sparked my ADHD, so I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes on Saturday, even though the liberals keep raising the taxes on them, which actually worked out because I lost 3 pounds from not having an appetite. Okay, can you just send it over? This is every conversation. She sounds like she has the most confusing political views ever. Sounds like my coworker. We'll call her Carla. We had a girl transfer to our office last week and Carla had already told her about the UTI she had, like 4 months ago. I've personally heard or overheard the story about her food poisoning incident at least a dozen times. I don't think anyone needs to hear it was coming out of both ends. Ever? Carla was out sick yesterday after having an allergic reaction to something, so heaven help us today if she returns. See also that time she tried to get something off the top shelf and fell and hit her elbow. The 3 times she's had kidney stones, her 2 UTI infections, food poisoning, the 24 mosquito bites she got on vacation, and a partridge in a pear tree. The guy who eats several hard-boiled eggs every morning for breakfast in an open cubicle environment. The smell is somehow worse on Monday mornings. I used to work with a guy who would only eat 4 hard-boiled eggs for lunch each day. But he'd only ever get through 3 of them and he'd walk around the office trying to hand people his extra egg. That was the most normal part about the guy, I'm afraid. Can I offer you a nice egg in this trying time? Is he perhaps eating 4 dozen eggs? If so, he might just be trying to get large. But beware, once he's grown, that number will jump to 5 dozen eggs. Naturally, he'll become approximately the size of a flat-bottomed river vessel. Whenever he wants to say something, he pauses in the middle of the sentence like he's waiting for you to react to every bit of information. So, my son was watching Netflix, pauses for 4 seconds, eye contact all the time, and he told me to join him. Pauses again, to start watching Jessica Jones. He usually does it with a glass of water and takes a sip during the pauses. I used to work with a guy who would eat those Vienna sausages out of the little can, then slurp the juice in the bottom. No. I cringed so hard at that I think I pulled a muscle in my jaw. There is a special place in hell for people who eat loudly in a busy workplace. I think honestly even hearing the word slurp makes me shudder and gag slightly. But that might just be me being a type A weirdo. I like all of my coworkers. The woman I couldn't stand was HR from corporate. She was here for a week and I could not wait for her to leave. She made sure that we knew she didn't care about me and the other lady, both temporary employees, even though we're likely to be hired. She would not stop talking about how she's single and men were hitting on her in all the countries she had visited on her vacation. She constantly talked about how she's trying to lose weight, but kept eating the fattiest crap I've seen, all while complaining about America's eating habits. She took over our marketing manager's office for the week because she was too lonely in the back area. Sorry, the graphic designer and I are busy working. She would not shut the frick up about shopping. She didn't understand that I don't have extra money to spend. She cooked horrible-smelling fish in the microwave, then proceeded to burn some popcorn later. She kept stealing all of my soft Kleenexes I bought from home. She cancelled our work Halloween party. Good lord, she was unpleasant. Apparently, I live in a TV show and no one told me. When I was in the Air Force, there were plenty of these types of people, but there was one legend who'll outlive them all. Let's call him Vic. Vic was in his late 30s maybe, balding, overweight, annoying, and generally the worst NCO the US Air Force ever saw. Here's a list of his accomplishments. Vic routinely practiced terrible weapon discipline. He would constantly have his weapon pointed at you. He couldn't even clear his weapon to enter the chow hall. A Marine had to do it for him. I had never been so embarrassed to be an airman in all my service. Vic somehow came back to the site with junk every single day. We have no idea where he found it or what half of it was. He once brought back a gigantic Donkey Kong-looking hammer, no explanation for its intended use. Another time, he came back with a belt of ammunition that he'd found on the road. Yeah, sure, you know, it's a war zone. People get blown up every day by improvised explosives on the side of the road. Just go pick up something like that. Vic would argue with you about where your hometown is located geographically. Vic was responsible on more than one occasion for complete mission failure. The specifics I can't quite divulge, but rest assured he was brilliantly stupid. Vic could barely speak or write English. He was born in Florida. His ancestors came to this country a couple of hundred years ago. Vic dropped a T-wall, gigantic concrete wall, on a tent with a front loader. Almost killed someone. Vic wore my uniform top back to his barracks, but then later denied the whole thing. Vic was fired from his position twice on 2 separate deployments. Saw him a year later, he had been promoted. This lady at my office has freakishly good hearing and preemptively does weird helpful things for people. Like yesterday, an intern asked one of our agents for the agent's code. Her office is at the other end of the suite, but somehow she heard, wrote down each agent and their code on a post-it, and brought it to the intern's desk. If she overhears someone speaking with service ops about a specific form, she'll quietly email them a copy. Little things like that. People think it's super creepy. I only know this because it's me and I just overheard my coworkers talking about how weird I am. Oh. Maybe you should stop for a week and see what happens. Maybe they'll miss it or you can be lazier. Don't stop doing what you're doing. Just pipe up and say, "Oh, I have that info for you right here." People will appreciate you without the creep factor ever being added in. My boss leaves notes at my desk for me every so often ranging from "You look good today" to "I fricking hate you." My personal favorite, he once wrote "Love you" on a sheet on my desk, then went to my coworker's cube next to mine and I could hear him writing something. When he left, the coworker and I both asked, "What did he write on your desk?" and showed each other simultaneously. His said, "You, not so much." Oh man, let me tell you about Hugo. Where to begin? It's holiday party time, and the ice is all frozen into one big chunk. Not to worry though, Hugo is on it. Here's a big rusty hammer borrowed from one of the foresters. Don't worry about using a dirty hammer to break up something you're about to put in your drink. A little iron oxide in your soda is good for the constitution. Am I right? What's that you say? A cake for someone's retirement? How nice! Hugo will cut himself a nice big slice, then lick the frosting off the knife before putting it back in the cake. Yes, we all saw you do that, and yes, we're going to wash the knife. Heck yes, another holiday party. What is this item on the buffet? Will Hugo like it? Guess he had better stick his fork in there to grab a piece to try while standing in line. Oh no, Hugo has a cold. Better go gurgle some water in the kitchen sink, then spit it back out. Oops, he forgot to take a sponge everyone uses to clean their dishes out of the sink first. Oh well, better just leave it in there. It's all dirty now. Bonus time, I also work with Jacob. One day, a mutual coworker left a salad out on her desk because she had an errand to run during lunch. When she came back, half of the salad was gone. What's this? A note from Jacob? Apparently, the salad looked too good, and he couldn't help himself. Schlepp brings in 2 bags every day filled with his crap, like a bagman. Notebooks, clothes, food, toys, junk. He leaves little bits of paper around, upon which little pieces of his mind spill out, like the third chair from the window. What the frick does that even mean? He writes Doctor Who fanfiction, and we got to read some once. Not good. Smiles and mumbles and never looks anyone in the eye. I think he's gonna kill us someday. Guy openly declared he took the job because he expected it to be nothing but ugly, fat women. He obviously meant it because he couldn't work with any of the more attractive women in the office. Constantly told one that she was too pretty to be smart, and then would switch it up by telling her how stupid she was. Constantly scoffed at anyone who offered him help, and never hesitated to mention that he had a master's degree. Told me, "Don't frickin' argue with me," around coworkers when I corrected him. He was wrong. Had a loud booming voice in an office where voices carry, and would stand in your office saying the most inappropriate things like, "I like to bang pregnant girls because they can't get pregnant." Came in one day after being at an adult club all night and walking to work after his car broke down with a sunburn on one half of his body. He didn't hesitate to tell everyone exactly what had happened. A girl was stretching and had her arms extended out, and he, likely purposefully, walked crotch first right into her hand and proclaimed loudly, "Stop touching my Johnson!" Had some neurological issue which caused him to shake a bit, not Parkinson's, pretty regularly, and would compound that by downing no less than 5 cups of coffee before 10 a.m. until he was a total mess. Updated service tickets with very helpful and professional comments like, "Dropped in your queue like it's hot," and "Solved this problem like a boss." When he was finally confronted about the list of transgressions, he confided, "I'm surprised it took them so long to talk to me about it." What's the strangest thing about the UK as an outsider? Saying "Way" when someone falls over or drops a glass. People apologizing when passing in front of you at the supermarket. Feels good though.
I'm in the UK from Canada. I can't imagine anywhere not apologizing anytime you mildly inconvenience another person.
UK here, but my American ex seemed surprised that while "let's go for a pint after work" in the US meant "let's go get a drink and then head home," here in the UK it's more like "let's go get smashed after work." Apparently you really mean that crap when you say one drink.
I was gonna deny that, but it's actually kinda true. I live in New York, and when a friend says, "Wanna grab a beer?" it means 3 to 4 beers at the most. If we're looking to get sauced, we always just say, "You want a drink tonight?"
This would be a convo with my other half. Me, "Babe, I'm off out." Her, "Out yeah, not out out." "Yeah, babe, just out."
"Alright, see you soon."
For context, out being a pub or a mate's house for a few, and out being clubs or a 12-hour bender or whatnot.
Putting an X at the end of their text messages.
I didn't even realize this was a UK thing. I thought everyone did it. Important to note, the levels of affection the amount of kisses provided indicates. X is a casual acquaintance, 2 X's a friend, 3 X's definitely shagging and or in love, 4 X's, anything more than 3 X's puts you firmly in the psychopath spectrum in my opinion. There's a guy I work with and his wife sends about 20 X's after every single message, even if it's just like a sentence long. Something's going wrong there.
Yeah, the meanings of 1 or 2 are a bit fluid, but if you go for 3, that's definitely a leap beyond basic friendship and courtesy.
Now you mention it, a lot of my British friends do this, and I'd never really clicked that it was a common link. Interesting. And I should clarify, despite what a lot of commenters seem to think, I'm not actually British, so I'm being as educated here as any of you are.
I just think the names they give to places are so oddly fascinating, like Stoke-on-Trent or Kingston-upon-Thames or Aldermanbury Square. They all just seem so whimsical and full of history.
UK place names can tell you so much about the place. The Anglo-Saxons were fastidious with some of the geographical naming conventions, so the form of hill they used can tell you what kind of hill it is, whether it's steep, plateaued, etc. So like Swindon came from a name that meant a plateaued hill with pigs on it. Or you can tell whether Vikings had a prominent presence there. Like all the seaside towns up north that end up B are using an Old Norse name element, and Skegness might once have been a home to a very bearded person because of the Old Norse hweg element. Possibly the skeggy bit could also just be a name.
There are some excellent ones in the southwest where I'm from. Budleigh Salterton, Cheriton, Fitzpaine, Westward Ho! The exclamation mark is actually part of the spelling. Lustley Cleave.
All of the accents in a relatively small area. I'm a Brit and I live in the Midlands and go to university. I only live, and grew up, 45 minutes from my uni, but everyone from that area sounds completely different from me, and occasionally I'll have a communication breakdown with the locals as we just cannot understand each other's certain terms or slang. The food alters an awful lot too. At uni, I can get oatcakes really easily. They're everywhere, it's bliss, but back home it's difficult to find any. I'm obsessed with British panel shows. I don't know how people over there feel about them, but I'll spend hours on YouTube watching old episodes of Cats Does Countdown and Would I Lie to You? These are just quality comedy for me and far better than all the dumb reality shows on TV here in the States. Panel shows are popular here, but they're seen in the comedy scene as a necessary evil to get popular enough to go on tour. Watch UK Taskmaster if you want to see the greatest show ever made. Alright, this is wildly inaccurate. Every person on those shows will have been touring and doing the circuit for years.
As an outsider who does watch a lot of them, it seems like panel shows are viewed as a reliable source of income you get to have when you're already popular. Downplaying everything, like, yeah, that's alright food, when in fact it was an excellent dining experience.
It's out of love for the ironic statement. Bit windy in a force 9 gale. You think there's an issue when the house is on fire? You've got red on you when you're covered in blood.
Or when things are horrendous. That stiff upper lip. My mate was 30 when she found out that her dad had lung cancer. He deteriorated rapidly while she was pregnant and died just 2 days before her baby was born. I went over to look after the kids so she could deal with the funeral arrangements, etc. When I asked how she was doing, she sighed and said, "I'll admit, I'm not great." She obviously cried, grieved, and talked through her feelings, but when she had crap to be getting on with, she was amazing at powering through what needed to be done. For anyone wanting an insight into British understatement, here's something to keep in mind. In everyday language, not bad means, hey, this is pretty good. It can also mean that something's not actually bad, but not great either. It's down to the tone of voice. Meanwhile, not great means awful in no uncertain terms. For a person to describe themselves as honestly not great or not doing great means their world is out of kilter and they're dealing with an existential crisis which may well haunt them for the rest of their lives and would possibly send others to their knees. Tea and sympathy is required in these circumstances. Using the tube during rush hour as a tourist was like a sci-fi dystopian novel. Everyone was dressed the same and completely silent except for a few people saying sorry to anyone who touched them or that they touched. And nobody laughed when the posh English lady on the intercom kept saying, "Next stop, Cockfosters. Transfer here for Tooting Broadway. Mind the gap." There's actually a reason for this. A lot of dystopian writing was based on English conformity in the world of work. The most obvious examples I can give is Orwell's 1984, where conformity is displayed truthfully among the elitism which still exists in Britain even now. Yep, it's strange being in a country like the UK where we all technically speak the same language, but the subtle differences and new systems make it so alien. And the commuting systems are the peak of it in my mind. Having tea. When I went over to the UK for a holiday, the people who I visited asked me what I wanted for tea. Like an ignorant fool, I replied with rooibos. They were not asking what kind of tea I'd like, apparently. I felt a bit stupid to be honest, but at least I know something new now. Nah, it's all good fun. I love laughing and talking about different terminology and cultures, like chips and crisps, car park, parking lot. Actually, even here people do argue about what tea means. Even bread rolls, buns, cobs. Here in the deep south of England, we use tea to mean dinner. It's just contextual, like no one ever is confused about which tea the person means. I watch a lot of Premier League and thus watch a lot of fan channels on YouTube. I'm amazed at how quickly you guys can pull the most unique insults out of thin air and continue like it's nothing. Lukaku is crap, mate. He couldn't hit water from a boat. Captain, he couldn't lead a pack of ants to a picnic. There's obviously better ones, but I'm not as quick-witted as the Brits, so I'm not exactly doing it justice. But I love your humor and basically everything around football culture. Could fall into a barrel full of breast and come out sucking his thumb was a classic one of these. This is magic. This is how words were originally intended to be compiled. Hate to tell ya, I went to a ton of games a couple of seasons back and we aren't really being witty more than we remember 2 or 3 really solid lines and use them for a variety of players. Plus a big umbrella term for analysis is just calling them wank. Frickin' Ozil, he's frickin' wank, mate. Mesut Ozil in probability isn't actually bad. He's a world-class midfielder and a World Cup winner. However, should he have a bad game, he's thereby relegated to wank until he has a good run of form, which is known as doing alright. If he actually has a good season, he will basically be deified and have songs created about him. See Mohamed Salah for Liverpool the last 2 seasons. Actually, that's something the Terraces, football crowd, does over here that you don't see in America, is songs sung about individual players. They can be good or bad. When I went to see Everton a few years back, the crowd was singing to Tim Howard to the tune of London Bridge is Falling Down. Timmy Howard's got Tourette's, got Tourette's, got Tourette's. Timmy Howard's got Tourette's, frick, crap, wanker. I thought the strangest thing in the UK was the bars and nightclubs with signs saying to not attack paramedics. Unfortunately, all too necessary from what I've heard. For some inexplicable reason, a lot of paramedics have been attacked when trying to help people. I think it's because people fear them getting the police involved if you've got substances on or in you. In reality, paramedics only give a crap what substances you've got so they can try to help you. No use thinking someone is having a heart attack when they really just need naloxone. Such polite insults. I was watching some Brexit crap a while ago, and some fella told another dude that he was screaming across the bar in the most eccentric fashion. American here who's been on and off following Brexit. I love watching the House of Commons and especially Burko. In Congress, there's the idea of order and civility and not talking while someone else is. Over there's a whole lot of rebelling and sass, and I love it. I'm British, and the only insults I ever hear are long lists of things that would get you demonetized on YouTube. I was in Bath yesterday, and some dude, probably in his early 20s, quite posh, in a suit, wandering down the main shopping street, having to stop and recalibrate himself every few steps. It was only about 5 p.m. Nice counterpoint to the tourists and the beautiful 18th century buildings. He's just practicing his silly walk. He was on his way to the Ministry of Silly Walks to get a research grant. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The pub is the most culturally UK place, and queuing is the most UK behaviour. Yet there's no queuing for a drink in a pub. It's a mental queue. Everyone knows who at the bar is to be served next. Sorry, love, he's before me. Until you get the slag who knows full well he's cutting in front of you and others. The bar staff usually clock who's next anyway and ignore them, or you just have to sort it yourself. Oi mate, not you, and a thumb over to the person you know who is in front of you. As a resident of the Nordic countries, I would contest that queuing is more British than Nordic, especially Sweden. It's like a gosh darn religion over there. I've only been to London, but well-dressed people passed out drunk in alleyways at 11 a.m. Also, the very defined rules about when you can speak to each other. People are very friendly within the bounds of the rules, but literally panic if someone engages with them outside of these bounds. Also, the drinking culture. Just wow. I want to clarify that I mean wow in both a positive and negative sense. A cleaning lady scared out of her mind by 20 drunks in a male bathroom was bad, but being able to drink from a bottle of wine as I wandered around the city with my friend and not have to worry about the cops was fantastic. Alright, now people are writing to me that it's illegal to walk around town drinking, but I will counter that I walked past whole groups of people on the sauce on the sidewalk, so I guess that if the police were enforcing that one, I guess I was the least of their worries. Okay, more people have written into me, and apparently it's not illegal. Good to know. I gotta say that for the most part, I adore the British. Got to say that as a southerner, this is quite true down here, but as soon as you get up north, everyone is much friendlier and loves a chat. I met a dude from up north the other day, and he said the same thing without me mentioning my thoughts, whether positive or negative. He told me that he was very sorry that my whole perception of the UK had been formed in London. As a Brit, reading all of these stories has been a real treat. It might just be lunchtime beer talking, it's Friday after all, but I've really enjoyed myself. Cheers. Constantly making jokes about pedos. Dark humor in general. One of my mates was chatting up a girl in a pub once, and once he nipped to the loo, I went over and told her she'd better watch him as he was a convicted pedophile. She shot off back to her mates and wouldn't talk to him again. When I told him why, he just laughed and called me the C-word. I'm Portuguese and I lived in the UK for 2 years. The use of cheers confused me so much. When I'm supposed to use it? Is it a thank you? A goodbye? A hello? I'm supposed to reply cheers in return? I know it's probably because of a long shared cultural history and that most people live and die in the same areas they're born, but I don't understand the different stereotypes based on towns, cities, and villages. I'm not talking really big generalities like people in the north are friendlier or people in London are more hurried and fast-paced. I'm not talking about large regional differences. I'm talking stereotypes based on specific, very small places. Well, he was from Derbyshire, collective eye roll, so you know how he was. You know how all those Yorkshiremen of a certain age act. All the heads nod in unison. I grew up in Kent, so I was not familiar with how those chavs from Milton Keynes spoke. Multiple harumphs. I have no frickin' clue what being from a specific small town or village means, but it seems everyone in the UK knows all the different stereotypes and idiosyncrasies of every village in the whole gosh darn country. It's basically a class thing. Everyone thinks the next town over is a crap hole, but if the big city 2 towns over says the same thing, then you all unite against them, and so on. Pull cord switches, mostly in bathrooms. Where I come from, we only have attached to the wall switches, except for maybe some super old lamps. One thing I can't wrap my head around is how people go partying wearing nothing but a shirt or small dress, regardless of the weather, which is often quite cold, especially in, winter. I observe large groups of such people every weekend. They're not even carrying jackets or anything, and they're taking the bus. This would be semi-understandable if they took cabs everywhere and literally didn't spend more than a couple of minutes outside. I've been living in the UK for 5 years, and what still gets me is people saying, "You all right?" instead of "How are you?" For me, the "you all right" makes me think I look sad or sick. It's weirdly accusatory, even though I know it just means "How are you?" We have that in Cumbria too, a whole conversation played out as "Right, right."
Thank you, and most of the time when they say it to each other, it doesn't even seem to be a question, just two people saying all right to each other, not answering the question and moving on to the next part of the chat. Here in Ireland, Dublin anyway, we dropped the you. We just say alright, and the reply is also alright. If you're not alright, you don't mention it. American living in London for a few years now. One of the biggest things is definitely the drinking culture and how much it's embedded in all of society. I thought coming from the States that we drank a lot, but here it's on a different level. It's very common to have a pint or two during lunch breaks before going back to work. Pubs are on every corner, and the public drinking laws are astounding for an American. The sense of orderliness and politeness. Brits are amazing, diligent with following the rules. They queue quietly for public transportation, stand on the right, and don't outwardly complain when something goes wrong, though they're the best at tutting under their breath. Keep calm and carry on really is practiced in every part of life here. There's a sense of collectivism that I sometimes find strange when coming from a country that prides itself on individualism. Humor. The British humor relies completely on sarcasm, while American humor is more in-your-face slapstick. They each have their place and time, but sometimes it can feel exhausting to constantly have to unpack British comedy or humor due to its constant push for double entendres, ambiguity, and innuendos. Innuendo. I feel far too British to agree with the above comment and then chuckle at yours. As a Dutch person, the same sense of orderliness really struck me as well. It's like London is insanely crowded hell, though Amsterdam is worse, but everyone is doing their best to make it easier for each other. If the escalator sign says to stand on the left and walk on the right, or vice versa, people actually do what it says. It's amazing. It's great, but it leaves us with incredibly short fuses in cultures that don't have these customs in place. I'm a Brit living in China. I have to drink at least twice the tea I used to in order to recover from my subway journeys. If you would just bloody wait for me to alight the train, there will be ample time for you to board without having to push into me. So I'm British and I have an American friend I compare cultural notes with. One of my weirdest was when I mentioned finding a postbox from Victoria's reign. She was like, "You mean your mailboxes carry information about the current leader of your country?" To which I replied, "Of course they do, it's the Royal Mail." Postboxes note the E, 2, and R and crown at the base, indicating it was placed in Elizabeth II's reign. The royal family. Are they just mascots of the UK, or do they hold any political power? Officially, the Queen does hold some political power, but she chooses not to exercise it, as she's required to be politically neutral. This is mostly relevant when it comes to passing legislature. Officially speaking, it requires the monarch's consent before a new piece of legislature is confirmed, but no monarch has actually declined to do so in more than 3 centuries. There are some other parts of the process of government that require her consent or participation, but these are mostly ceremonial, such as the opening of each parliamentary session, think of these like school semesters, or the official appointment of the Prime Minister. In most other respects, they do act as mascots, though many of them also manage various aspects of the Crown Estate, which involves managing businesses and charity outreach programs, maintaining property and land, etc. Many of them also hold, or have held, positions in the military, though I think most British Prime Ministers have said that they really valued talking things over with the current Queen at their weeklies, as she was such a confidential, neutral, experienced and pretty wise and level-headed person, except for when it comes to her children. I suspect Charles, if he doesn't pop his clogs before Liz does, will be much more of a pain in the arse. Hi, I'm from Germany and have spent some time in the UK. The one thing that was weird but nice was that people are polite when it comes to using public transportation. One time, the most annoying teenagers on the bus I was on stood up and left their seats as soon as 2 old ladies got on the bus. I find fascinating the current hatred and rivalry between the different countries of the UK. The Scottish government seems to despise the central UK government, which is England-dominated. In fact, it's really weird how even the Welsh, and to some extent the Republican Northern Irish, resent the domination of England in the UK as a whole. Weirdly enough, the English don't have their own devolved parliament, so the UK legislates for the whole of Britain as well as England-specific issues, giving rise to the West Lothian questions. Just a century ago, it seemed that whether Scottish or Welsh, everyone had no problem with being called British back then, when the British Empire was at its peak. Except the Irish, of course. Well, I studied there for a year, and I've been there countless times before, and after, I'm astounded at how much junk food there is everywhere. The first thing I was told when I moved there was, "Look out for chavs." I didn't know what chavs were, but not even 5 minutes after I arrived there had been 2 chavs fighting outside the supermarket right next to where I lived, with blood splatters still on the pavement when I walked to the supermarket. A little bit later, I learned quickly that you needed to avoid them at most cost. What I found fascinating was that the chavs could be any age, young or old. But the weirdest thing for me with the UK is that for a city to get the status of a city, it needs to have a cathedral. So for a big town like Middlesbrough, they can never become a city unless this is changed, and there are over 200,000 people living there. Hey, pal, sounds like you were at the Teesside Uni. My own hometown, no less. Chavs are a scary type, but they're also quite a complex social group. Not all are equal. Fun fact, Middlesbrough does have a cathedral. It's been rejected for what we call devolved city status since 2012, largely due to mayoral and councillor arguments. UK local politics deserves its own thread.
To be a city in the UK, you need either historically to be regarded as a city from before the 12th century or have been conferred city status by the government. Originally, the title of city was likely to be given to places with cathedrals, as they would be important settlements, but it's never been a prerequisite. I live near Brighton and Hove, which was granted city status in the 21st century, but doesn't have a cathedral.
Therapists of Reddit. What was your "you must be kidding me" moment? Some of these are gross. Doctor I used to work with told me about a woman who tried to kill herself, so they put her in a safe room. She then proceeded to try an overdose on water, which he told me is possible, but really hard to do. A client was going to probate court and thought he'd dress up by putting a non-slip sock on his collar as a tie. Trying to be supportive, I told him, "Nice tie," to which he replied, "It's not a tie, it's a sock, stupid." One client of mine bites and eats his fingernails. Gross, but not unheard of. Then I learned he stores his fingernails in a box in his room to save them for a snack later. A little grosser, but he's about 9, so I'm hoping he will grow out of it. What finally made me want to vomit was learning that when anyone in his family clips their nails, fingers or toes, they give him the clippings to add to his box. So when he's eating nails from the box, they could belong to his mother, father, or siblings. Yes, I've addressed the parents about enabling this behavior, but it is still happening. Edit, thank you for all your concerns for my client. I'm aware that it seems like pica or some sort of nutrition deficiency, and for all I know, it could be. I'm a behavioral therapist and not qualified to professionally recommend medical treatments to the family. I do know his parents have taken him to several doctors for multiple different tests for disorders, so this could have been addressed and they just chose not to disclose the information to me. I used to work with children that have autism and Down syndrome, which means a lot of play therapy. I had my moment when one of my clients wanted to sit on my lap while we practiced reciting animal cards, followed with their corresponding noise. Forgot what animal noise I made that made him laugh so much that he ended up peeing on me from the laughter. That night was also date night. Intake clinician here. What brings you in today? I'm here for adult image addiction. At this point, not the weirdest thing I've heard. Let's go with that. Okay, tell me about it. I watch it 3 times a week, for 15 minutes or so at a time. My girlfriend said I'm an addict and forced me to come in. I see lots of very extreme cases, but this was so minor that it made me stop for a moment. I sent them to couples counseling. Just today, I conducted a threat assessment on the first grader who told his teacher he wanted to stab himself with a knife and die. Upon further questioning, he revealed that he and Dad watched The Walking Dead together, and last time on the show, he saw 2 people stab themselves to death because, quote, they didn't want to get eaten by the zombies. Why are you even watching that show with a 6-year-old? Had a client who he found out was storing his own poop under his bed. He would then eat his poop for a snack. Edit. So I guess I should have added why he did this. First issue, he thought he was an alien, so eating his poop had a few benefits in his mind. First benefit, we could not study his poop. Second benefit, he felt that alien poop had nutrients he could not get from our food. He would eat normal food, but we found out he felt Earth food was poison and alien poop fixed that. Third benefit, alien poop is worth a lot of money, so he did not want us to steal it. When we found out what he was doing, I got to inform him that we were taking away his poop. He kicked me. Obligatory, not a therapist, but my hyperconservative parents sent me to an addiction therapist because they found out I smoked pot occasionally in high school. The therapist they chose was a former White House drug czar, a renowned authority on cocaine addiction and hard drug abuse, and an expert on rehabilitating extreme problem cases. My parents must have spent a fortune and pulled strings to get me an appointment. The first session, he asked me what drugs I use. I told him I smoke pot like once a week, and that was it. After a few rounds of, "come on, you can trust me," and "we can't begin treatment until you admit your problem," he realizes that I really do only smoke pot once in a while and literally says, "You've got to be kidding me. Tell your parents you're a normal teenager and you don't need to come back." One that sticks out in my mind was a mother that brought in her 5-year-old for therapy because she was into Disney princesses, which are clearly sexual, and since a 5-year-old is non-sexual, this must clearly mean she's being inappropriately abused by a close family member. I've also worked with countless couples who have come to counseling for adultery, wherein adultery equals adult images. One client even became suicidal because she caught her husband pleasuring himself after not screwing him for months. I know everyone has different values, but come on, y'all. Friendly reminder that if you enjoyed this content, hit subscribe and like the video. It really does help. And also, subscribe to Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. Thanks for watching, and remember to drink some water too. I was working surveillance one night at a psych ward, keeping a close watch on a mentally ill patient. Right before my shift started, I was briefed that the patient had started eating one of the light bulbs and attacked a nurse. At around 5 a.m., he woke up and saw me sitting there at the end of his bed. I said good morning, and he didn't reply. About 15 minutes of silence went by before he stood up, stared out the window, and said, "A person is most vulnerable when taking a crap." I didn't sit back down for the rest of my shift. Social work. Not therapy, but close enough. Me. We need to think of some new ways for you to discipline your daughters other than spanking. Client. But my parents did it to me, and I turned out okay. Me. Stares at this high school dropout drug addict who has spent his entire adult life in and out of jail/halfway houses, can't get a job, and has had his 3 kids removed for abuse and neglect. Okay. I actually did successfully turn this around in a gentle way and make him realize he hadn't actually, quote, turned out okay. I had a client, an older female refugee that I worked with for several months before she told me that she had court the next week and was worried because she could be deported if found guilty. She didn't tell me earlier because she was ashamed and suffered in silence. She was living with extended family, and the family got busted for smuggling and selling khat, a stimulant narcotic. The family determined that she would take the fall for her husband and sons who were behind the operation. At the arrest, the police brought an interpreter for a different language from a different ethnic group in a different country than the client was from. On top of that, she said the police didn't have an interpreter present during the questioning at the station, and she waited there for almost 2 days until they found an interpreter for her language. I asked her if she understood what was happening, and she said her lawyer, public defendant she met once, told her she would be deported. Beyond that, she had no understanding of the situation, process, etc. I had seen her psych evaluation stating that she had the cognitive equivalent of a 7-year-old. So I told her that we have information that could help her case and that her lawyer should see it as soon as possible. This was on a Friday, court was on Wednesday, and the client didn't know the name or any information about her public defender. We got a friend to help her collect the information. The client brought it to me on Monday, signed the ORI. Lawyer called me back that afternoon saying they've got nothing to help this poor woman even though the case seems appropriately set up. I told the lawyer that we've got a whole bunch of insight and data and records that will get the charges dropped. I didn't work Tuesdays and was going nuts worrying and hoping everything would get to where it needs to and in the hands of the people who need to see it. On Wednesday, news from court comes that all charges were dropped. I used to get all kinds of things sprung on me at the last minute, then have to perform all kinds of bureaucratic trapeze maneuvers to alter the outcome of high-stakes situations. I wrote so many letters. I was hired to be a mental health provider, but I ended up doing tons of case management because nobody else wanted to. Have a master's in clinical psychology and currently working towards my doctorate. I laughed reading this question because I feel like I have at least one of those moments per day at my clinic rotations, regardless of type of setting. One that stood out the most was when I was working a camp for children with various psychological disorders, most with some sort of behavioral concerns. The girl I was paired with had a history of aggressive and violent tendencies. We went the whole day without any problems. That was, until we were doing some group physical activity to wind down and focus before leaving for the day. She didn't like that this meant no longer playing with a certain toy, so she took off her shoe and threw it at the little boy in front of her. He had autism and immediately started crying and screaming. While someone helped him, I turned to the girl to explain to her what she did was wrong. As I turned towards her, she punched me square in the face, then grabbed a hold of my hair. Managed to pull out a good chunk. I'm about 5'1", and this girl was maybe 1 or 2 inches shorter than me and had about 20 pounds on me, despite being 9 years old. Trying to get a safe physical restraint was difficult and comical to say the least. Finally got some help from other staff, and we were able to calm her down after about 15 minutes. The kicker was, when we told her mom what happened, she basically dismissed the entire thing and laughed about it. So frustrating, because you know this kind of thing is reinforced at home as there is no punishment. The girl then starts hitting her mom, who grabs and holds down her arms. The little girl laughs, looks at me and the other staff member, and says, "Ugh, a little help over here? Are you going to let her do this to me? She's hurting my arm." I went home and did this weird laugh/cry for a few hours. Luckily, you learn pretty quickly not to take things personally and move on, so things were back to normal the next day. I do occasionally look back at that day just baffled at how quickly that whole situation escalated. Most of the other moments that come to mind involve poop in some capacity. I work in a community residence for adults with mental illness. Most of them are very capable and independent. One girl, 27 years old, constantly acts really dumb for sympathy and will do dumb things because she can, I guess. First week she was admitted, she tripped on something getting out of bed. She's 5'1" and like 200 pounds, and she fell on her foot and broke some of the small bones in the foot. I take her to get her cast, and she gets the usual don't get the cast wet, use your crutches, elevate, blah blah blah. Since her bedroom was on the 2nd floor, we had to send her back to her mother's house for a few weeks since she would not be able to exit the building in time in case of emergency. Well, 5 days later, the shoe/boot thingy to put over your cast comes in, and we call her up saying we'll bring it over. Her response? "Well, I don't think it'll fit." "Why not?" we ask. "Because I cut my cast off. I got it wet, and it was too tight." They didn't give her a second cast, and she never used her crutches, claiming they were unstable and she would fall and get hurt if she used them. Her foot never healed properly, and 2 months later, she fell and broke it again. Edit, since you all have questions. She didn't get a second cast because A, she would have to pay for it herself and she didn't have the money, and B, doctors did not want to give her another plaster cast, fearing she would just cut that off too. Other options for a cast insurance wouldn't cover. Number 2. Yes, being 5'1" and 200 pounds is severely overweight. Many times, people with mental health issues come from low-income backgrounds. Often, people with mental illness are overweight due to lack of good health care and know-how to lose weight themselves. Number 3, I can tell she acts stupid on purpose for several reasons. Mostly that when she thinks we're not watching, she slips up and behaves normally and makes actual intelligent decisions. Also, she's told us she thinks guys like her more if she's stupid, and she gets lots of sympathy from people for how stupid she is. Number 4, to the person who said she might likely lose the foot, she's told us she wants her foot amputated because then it wouldn't hurt so much. Logic. My client told me his family didn't appreciate his interest in guns, to which he proceeded to tell me he is always carrying. He then places his gun on the table in front of me and asked if it made me nervous. It did, but we focused more about why he wanted to know if I was nervous, and I brought it back around to his family. From then on, I made sure to always have access to a door and never put the client between the door and myself again, just to be safe. This recently happened to me. I have a client who is a daily methadone doser. During our last session, he complained of sleep issues. Delving into this new issue, he described his solution to me. He saves his spit in a jar to drink at night when he is unable to sleep. Saves his spit in a jar to drink later. I'm a therapist and have a few of these stories, but this story was actually told to me by a therapist friend of mine. He said that he was working in a mental hospital a few years ago, and he and other staff had heard a loud scream from down the hall. They ran to go check it out and got to a patient's room to see blood all over his face and hand, and realized he had torn his own eyeball out. They tried to defuse the situation and start looking around for the eyeball. They couldn't find it. He had eaten his own eyeball. Edit, I don't know the reason the patient gave for eating and or removing his eye, but I will say it takes a pretty severe level of psychosis for a person to be able to do this. Honestly, he was probably more concerned about the quote reason he needed to take his eye out than he was with the pain of it. I can't imagine the emotional pain he must have been going through to be able to get to this point. Worked one summer at a summer school for special needs children about 2 years ago when I was 14. I was just a teacher's aide, so most of what I was doing was playing with the lower maintenance children and just running errands for the teachers. One morning, I was helping the kids put their stuff into their cubbies, and one of the kids was just standing in front of his, staring at me with his lunch bag in his hands. This was one of the more violent kids who would act up at the slightest of breezes. He was about 11 or 12 and had severe autism. I asked him if he needed help putting his stuff away, and he replied with only some mumbling. I asked him to speak clearly, and he said, "I'm going to hurt you." I was really confused and asked him to repeat what he said. He then screamed at the top of his lungs, "I'm going to hurt you!" and swung his lunchbox straight for my head. Luckily, I kinda expected this thing to happen, so I was ready to duck, and he missed. I was not allowed to even touch any of the students because I was not trained to restrain them, so until the teachers got him under control, all I could do was run around the classroom as he chased me. Once the teachers restrained him, he was under control within about 10 or 15 minutes. When the teacher asked him why he did what he did, he said that he was angry because his dad didn't bring him to Denny's that morning. I was assaulted because a kid didn't get to go to Denny's. Quite common, actually. Anything outside the normal routine, and they have a meltdown. My son is autistic, and when he was younger, he'd have an absolute meltdown when the seasons changed. For the winter months, he'd obviously put on his winter jacket, hat, and gloves. Once spring came, I gave him a light coat one morning, and he fell to the ground crying and screaming because he thought he wasn't going to school. Tough days, let me tell you. Thankfully, he has amazing teachers and support, and my biggest problem now is he takes his socks off at night and throws them on the side of his huge bunk bed that I can't move. So, typical annoying kid stuff now. Forensic therapist here. I work with paroled sex offenders. One time, a guy I worked with urinated on my coworker's car in broad daylight. She was in the car. He made eye contact with her while he was doing it. His PO picked him up from group 20 minutes later. He's currently having a little vacation at a state facility. When I worked in bereavement, a client of mine used the term, quote, skid marks when discussing the accident. For some reason, there and then, the expression just caught me off guard. I joined the dots, and the corners of my mouth started to rise. In actuality, this may have only lasted a moment, but it felt like minutes. All the while I was drawing blood as I chewed down on the insides of my cheeks. I felt like the worst human being alive. Was running an addiction treatment group. Some of the participants were referred by the court, usually for a DUI. The referral conditions were simple. If they finished treatment, they would not serve time in jail for the DUI. One of these court-referred DUI participants ran a limo service and showed up to group with a tablet and cell phone. He spread things out and proceeded to treat the space as his personal office. I intervened, explaining he would not be able to conduct business while participating in the group. He gave me a look that would have killed an ordinary person, said it was a busy time of year and he really needed to stay in touch with his drivers. I told him I understood, but he still needed to put the stuff away and pay attention. Lots of eye rolling, I can't believe this lady, and he still kept checking his phone and getting up to go outside and take calls. During the break, I told him his behavior was disruptive and he would have to leave. This seemed to make him happy, until I added I will be telling the judge he did not complete treatment. For the first time, he seemed to slowly realize he was there for a reason and might actually end up in jail because of his behavior. He apologized and asked to stay, and he settled down after that. Had a patient who swallowed things as a self-injuring behavior. This individual would swallow anything metal and pointy, usually as a way of getting into the hospital or to stay in the hospital. At one point, they wanted to get surgeries or procedures to have the objects removed, but they didn't actually want to die. One instance where they almost died after ingesting a series of closed safety pins that ended up opening inside their stomach stopped them from eating things that wouldn't pass. Anyway, so this person was upset that they were getting discharged as they wanted to stay until the beginning of the month. Hate to say it, but it's not uncommon to see people come in because they are out of benefits for the month. The usual complaints of wanting to die weren't working because we know this person doesn't actually want to die. So they went and swallowed the iron from the Monopoly game. It didn't work, we still discharged them, but ever since then, we haven't been allowed to have board games on the unit without staff supervision. Had a client who was told he absolutely had to start losing weight else he would become troublingly diabetic and begin losing appendages. He didn't put much effort in, eventually having his foot amputated. Time after time I saw him, I had to explain that having a foot amputated did not count as half a stone towards his weight loss targets. He was genuinely mortified. Had a patient once with auditory hallucinations. They suddenly decided I was, quote, the voice, and they had to do whatever I said. So, I encouraged them to do positive things for others, and always be nice to their mother. You know, now I actually am curious. If there's anybody listening to these videos out there with schizophrenia, how does that affect you? Did the voices affect you in a positive way? Do they tell you to do positive things? Or are these hallucinations always negative? Let me know in the comments. I was working with a woman who had struggled with alcohol throughout her life and during her pregnancies. She denied drinking while pregnant, but 2 of her children were born with fetal alcohol syndrome. She was seeing me in session to process her reaction to receiving letters from her children that basically called her out for being a bad mom and saddling them with the disease because she drank. She was really defensive and said, I don't know why they're mad at me, because everyone knows you get fetal alcohol syndrome from the dad. Not sure if deflecting or just that uninformed. It was pretty memorable when a histrionic patient leapt onto my desk so I could better appreciate her new sneakers. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.